You're watching City Channel 4, your window to our community.
I'd like to call to order the regular formal meeting of the Iowa City City Council, 16th of May, 2017. Welcome to all of you. It's been a pretty nice day, even though I must say it's kind of warm also. Feels like a summer day to me, but it's been a good day anyhow. So welcome to all of you. Roll call.
Otway. Cole.
Here.
Dickens.
Here.
Mims.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Thomas.
Here.
Throgmorton.
Here, Kingsley Botchway could not join us tonight. As I understand it, he has child care responsibilities that made it impossible for him to be here, and I'm sure most of you understand what that entails. So anyhow, item 2, Student Leadership Awards. We have students from 3 separate schools, so what I want to do is invite the students from First Alexander Elementary to come up, then Lemmy Elementary, and lastly Shemmack Elementary. So let's start with the 2 students from Alexander Elementary, Ian Moore and Jade Spisher. Are they present? Yeah, I had a feeling they weren't. So what should I do with those 2? I should give them to you, right? Could you pass these along, please? All right, the next are 3 students from Lemmy Elementary School, Seth Clayton, Will Dixon, and Marcus Van Tassel. And I see, Will and Marcus? Yeah. Before I ask you to read your statements, what I want to do is draw your attention to this. Can you read what that says?
Iowa City Police.
Yeah, Iowa City Police, because one of the things I'm going to do in just a few minutes is read a proclamation declaring this National Police Week. That's the title, right? So I'm looking forward to that. And we just had a ceremony earlier today praising our police officers, and Councilwoman Susan Mims was here with me, as was Jeff and Ashley. Ashley over there. So it was fun to do, and I'm proud to wear this bracelet. Okay, so who's first? Let me see. Lemmy Elementary. So Seth is first, and Seth is not here, right? Can we set that down? Yeah, okay. So these awards read exactly the same for both of you, so I'll read them in a minute. But I want you to read your statements first. So, Will, would you please start? Just read your statement.
Yes.
I can hold this for you. Just look out to your folks and everybody else.
Every morning before I leave for school, my mom calls out, "Be a leader today." I'm honored to be chosen as a leader by my Lemmy friends. Being a leader means to follow the rules, do the right thing, help others, pay attention during classes, not to talk when the teacher is talking, and volunteer in school and community groups like K-Kids, Band, and Boy Scouts. A leader never cuts in line, always claps for others, and if someone asks you to grab the ball that someone hits or kicks, you always say yes and help. I will continue being a leader every day.
Excellent, excellent. Well done, Will. Everybody clapped for you. You noticed that, right? I don't know. Good question. Okay, so Marcus, you're next. I can hold this for you, and you can just read.
Just recently, my peers and I were all asked to pick 3 people that we thought were good examples of leaders. To my surprise, I was one of the 3 that were chosen for this award. Before we voted, we discussed attributes that a leader would have, and I recognized them as traits I strive to have and help others to have. Do I have all of them? No. No, I do not, but I can try. Trying to be better and lead others by example is a quality of the best leaders. Said qualities are the basic principles we are taught throughout our youth. Kindness, responsibility, respectfulness, and trustworthiness are examples. I'm very happy that my peers have found the same characteristics in me that I find in my parents, teachers, leaders, coaches, friends, principals, and various other leaders. I definitely admire those leaders and their virtues and hope that I can be a good leader in the future.
Beautifully done, both of you. I'm sure you are outstanding leaders at your school. So here's what the award reads. Everybody wants to know this, right? Student Leadership Award for your outstanding qualities of leadership within Lemmy Elementary, as well as the community, and for your sense of responsibility and helpfulness to others. We recognize Marcus and Will as an outstanding student leader. Your community is proud of you. Presented by the Iowa City City Council, May 2017. So, Marcus, this is yours, and Will, let's make sure. I knew that was going to happen. So, yeah, this is yours, Will. So I know the parents are out there, and they're very proud, very happy, and I think there are probably some proud sisters and brothers and whatever else too. So. Job well done. So thanks, both of you. Keep up the good work. Nice job. Exactly right. Nice job. Okay, so we have three other students from Shimmick, and I know I met them all out front. So Ashley. Well, you know who you are. Come on up. Okay. Am I going to remember your name? You're Ashley, aren't you? Yeah. All right. Good memory, Jim. Mm-hmm. So why don't you read your statement first, and then we'll move on.
Okay. Being a good citizen means helping others in your community and treating everybody fairly, no matter who they are. It also means helping to keep your community and other places clean. During school, I read to younger students, collect recycling bins in classrooms, and I help my classmates with work if they are stuck. If I notice if someone is feeling sad, I try to talk to them and see how I can make their day a little bit better, even if it means just saying hi. Every Christmas Eve, my aunt, uncle, sister, and I make gift bags for kids at the Ronald McDonald House who may not get any presents on Christmas. I also help out around my neighborhood by walking my neighbors' dogs and helping with their garden. Next year, I plan to be on the safety patrol and continue to volunteer and help out my community.
Excellent. Bravo. Next is Sydney Wilkes. So would you read your statement?
A good citizen should be inclusive, not exclusive. They should be active, not passive. Build others up, not put them down. And they should be someone others look up to. They should be welcoming, grateful, and go out of their way to help those around them. I think I got this award because I try to follow these rules and inspire others to do the same. I participate in marches, and part of Safety Patrol, I help younger students learn to read and contribute to various charities. I will keep trying to be a good citizen because I think one good citizen can go a long way for their community, and I want to ensure a safe and welcoming community.
Excellent. Thanks. Trying to open this thing. It's stuck. Oh, shoot. Time out. Is your dad Brad? Yeah. I thought so. So this is Adam Zeithamel. My son Patrick used to throw pitches to your dad Brad way back when in Little League, Senior League if I remember rightly, and I have a photograph somewhere of them celebrating, leaping into each other's arms because somebody threw, I think it was Pat threw the ball to your dad, and Brad tagged the man out at home, and the team won. It was really great. So would you say hi to Brad for me? Hi. Do you remember that? You know, you look a little different than you did back then. Oh, sweet. That's really good. Okay, so Adam, would you read your statement?
To me, being a good citizen means always helping people, cheering people up when they feel down, and always making sure all places are the best that they can be. I also think it means not just helping individual people, but raising money for a good cause. In school, I have a kindergarten reading buddy and a third grade buddy where we work on reading more fluently. I also help my classmates if they're struggling with their work. I am part of Safety Patrol. I helped organize and raise money for the dance marathon, and I was part of recycling in 5th grade. Outside of school, I help with fundraisers, play my cello at places like the library or at the mall, and even hospitals for everyone to hear. I plan to continue playing the cello around the community and would like to start doing some volunteer work at animal shelters, music shops, and other volunteer organizations.
All right. Good job, Adam. Okay, so I'm going to read this statement, and the only thing that varies is your name. So, all right. So, Student Leadership Award for your outstanding qualities of leadership within Shimmick Elementary, as well as the community, and for your sense of responsibility and helpfulness to others, we recognize your names. As an outstanding student leader, your community is proud of you, presented by the Iowa City City Council, May 2017. Join me in celebrating these really outstanding kids. Why don't you open it for me? I'm having trouble holding this mic. This is yours, Sydney. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Enjoy the rest of the evening. Have fun. I meant to ask you a question about parks, but that's another thing. Brad, it's really fun seeing you. Yeah, yeah. We'll wait a second until everybody's had a chance to depart. Okay, let's turn to item 3, proclamations. We have 4 separate proclamations this evening. The first is Kids to Parks Day. Whereas May 20th, 2017 is the 7th Kids to Parks Day organized and launched by the National Park Trust, and whereas Kids to Parks Day empowers kids and encourages families to get outdoors and visit America's parks, and whereas the City of Iowa City maintains 47 parks that offer space for active play, reflection in nature, and community gathering, and whereas Iowa City Parks and Recreation staff believe that all children should have the opportunity to learn outdoor recreation skills such as how to swim, how to bike safely, and how to play in the outdoors, and whereas it is important to introduce a new generation to our nation's parks because of the decline in park attendance over the last decades, and whereas we should encourage children to lead a more active lifestyle to combat the issues of childhood obesity, diabetes mellitus, hypertension, and hypercholesterolemia, and whereas Kids to Parks Day is open to all children and adults across the country to encourage a large and diverse group of participants, and whereas Kids to Parks Day will broaden children's appreciation for nature and the outdoors, now therefore I, James A. Throgmorton, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim May 20th, 2017 to be Kids to Parks Day, and urge residents of Iowa City to make time on that day to take the children in their lives to a neighborhood, state, or national park. Could somebody accept this proclamation, please? Hi, Julie.
Thank you, and what a perfect night to say this. Get out and play in the parks after the meeting tonight. Lots of new playgrounds, lots of new things going in this summer. It's going to be a great time to gather in our parks. Thanks.
Thanks, Julie. Okay, next is Horace Mann Centennial Celebration Day. Before I read this, I want to make sure that we take steps to try to get the same kind of proclamation for Longfellow. I know I tried to do that before working with the Horace Mann people, and it didn't quite work out, but I definitely want to read a proclamation for Longfellow. So, whereas Horace Mann Elementary is located in the North Side neighborhood at 521 North Dodge Street and was one of 3 schools built in Iowa City during 1917, and whereas Horace Mann Elementary was named after an educational reformer who dedicated himself to promoting public education and who believed that, quote, education is the great equalizer of the condition of men, I'd say of women too, the balance wheel of the social machinery, unquote, and whereas the mission of Horace Mann Elementary is to provide a nurturing environment that supports lifelong learning with a challenging and creative curriculum, and where learning is enhanced by partnerships within the community. And whereas Horace Mann is one of 26 schools in the Iowa City Community School District, which serves over 14,000 students in Iowa City, Coralville, North Liberty, and other nearby communities. And whereas the year 2017 commemorates the 100th year of Horace Mann Elementary as a vibrant school in the Central District of Iowa City. Now, therefore, I, James A. Throgmorton, Mayor of the City of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim May 18, 2017, as Horace Mann Centennial Celebration Day, and urge all residents of the city to join the students, faculty, staff, and neighbors of Mann Elementary in celebrating the school's past contributions and future prospects. I know the principal of Horace Mann is here. Could you come up and accept the proclamation?
Julie Robinson, principal, accepting.
Thank you. Watch out. Thanks.
I just wanted, on behalf of the students and staff and parents at Mann Elementary, to thank the mayor and thank the council for this proclamation. We're proud to be part of Iowa City and look forward to being an important part of it for the next 100 years. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Julie. Keep up the great work at Horace Mann. All right. Next is National Public Works Week. Whereas 2017 marks the 57th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association, and this year's theme is Public Works Connects Us, and whereas public works as a cornerstone of civilization plays a vital role in connecting us all together, and whereas public works provide, maintain, and improve the structures and services that assure a higher quality of life for our community, and whereas our streets, roads, bridges, and public transportation keep us linked together, and our clean water and sanitation services keep us healthy, and allow our community to grow and prosper, and whereas the employees of the Iowa City Public Works Department work tirelessly every day to strengthen the bond that keeps us all connected, and whereas it is in the public interest for Iowa City community members, business owners, community leaders, and youth to gain an understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their daily lives. Now, therefore, I, James A. Throgmorton, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby proclaim the week of May 21 to May 27, 2017, to be National Public Works Week in the City of Iowa City, and call upon community members, business leaders, and community organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing and maintaining our public works infrastructure, and to recognize the contributions that our public works professionals make every day to our health and welfare. Can somebody accept this proclamation? Ron, I thought you were sitting there for a reason. Thanks for the great work you all do.
Mr. Bear, Council, I appreciate your recognition of National Public Works Week on behalf of our 140 Public Works employees that affect and impact our daily lives of our community members. I proudly accept this award. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ron. Okay, and the last one has to do with National Police Week. And as I indicated, speaking with students, Jeff and Ashley and Susan and I, and maybe some others here.
Eleanor was there.
Eleanor, thank you, excuse me, had the opportunity to be in this room, and at which time I read the proclamation to quite a large number of police officers and the chief and so on. And we all directed praise toward them that is well called for. So I'll read the proclamation. Whereas in 1962, President John Kennedy set aside this week to pay tribute to the law enforcement officers of this nation and to memorialize those who have fallen in line of duty. And whereas the police officers and their support staff in Iowa City work with courage and dedication to enforce the laws fairly, to reduce crime and violence, and in general to improve the quality of life for everyone in this community. And whereas the dedicated men and women who have chosen law enforcement as a career often face unknown or extraordinary risk and danger in preserving our freedom and security, whereas these women and men are fathers and mothers, sisters and brothers, sons and daughters, and so we give gratitude to their families for supporting them in their career, and whereas officers of the Iowa City Police Department play a growing role as ones who promote harmony and mutual respect among citizens in an increasingly diverse population, and whereas, as we wish to give everyone an opportunity to appreciate and thank the men and women of the Iowa City Police Department who dedicate their lives to public service, now therefore I, James A. Throgmorton, Mayor of Iowa City, do hereby declare May 15 through 21, 2017, to be National Police Week in Iowa City and urge all citizens to participate fully in this observance. Julie, do we have someone to accept this?
Does anybody want to come forward? I wasn't funny, but.
Okay, I wanted to read it anyhow, whether it's the chief, well, you know, I know where the chief is actually tonight. He's at Oakdale Prison, listening to the Oakdale Community Choir conduct one of its concerts. So it's a great place to be at this moment. All right, let's see. I guess that gets us to item 4. Consider adoption of the consent calendar as presented or amended. We're going to remove item 4D14, but otherwise, I'd like to have a motion.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes, motion carries 6-0. Item 5, community comment. This is for items not on the formal meeting agenda. So anybody who wants to address any topic that's not on our formal meeting agenda should feel free to come up and speak. I'd like to have you limit your comments to not more than 5 minutes, but otherwise you're invited to speak. Please. Hi, Brandon.
Hey, Brandon Ross. You know, I won't say the whereases, by the way. I got all of them. I find it's interesting that we give a whole week to the police, but only one day to mothers who gave birth to those people. Just a thought. Kids in the parks. What I came to speak about was parks and the environment and global warming and considerations as relates to lawns. And in the past years, we have had lawn ordinances, and I could probably make you guess what is the inch height regulation limit and see how well informed you counselors really are. That could be kind of a fun trivia question. But it's hard because every single year practically it changes. So when I remember at one point it was about 10 inches. Previous to that it had been 8. then it went to 12, and then it went to 14, so you could have your grass 14 inches. And a lot of you are sitting here thinking, man, we're talking about lawns at city council, but, you know, the longer the lawn is, actually, by the way, the lawn now is down, it went back down to 12, then to 10, then to 8. Now it's at 8, which is a concern. I think that we should change it. I think that this is an outmoded type of situation with global warming and what we know about the environment and children and asthma and things like that. Less mowing is best. Higher the grass is better, it's more oxygen. If you're going to have a lawn, which is not the most efficient way of using the soil, you should have it higher, and it's better for everybody. But the constant cutting adds to air pollution and noise pollution. How many days have you been sitting at home arguing with your spouse, and you hear that lawnmower going? It kind of raises the stakes a little bit, for hours sometimes. I had a neighbor, I swear, he mowed his lawn for about 8 straight hours a day. I was trying to say, what the heck is going on here? He mowed it forwards, backwards, vertical, horizontal, diagonally, even in a rhombus shape. I think he was just trying out shapes. Anyway, I just thought that we should put the limit back up. That would be the most practical thing anyway. And also, I would like to mention, in the spirit of kids to the parks, that spraying the parks is not helpful. You talked about diabetes, want to get those kids out there running, not to be overweight or whatever. I think it's a good idea. But if you spray the parks, people with asthma, and a lot of kids these days have it, suffer. And also sprays that are herbicidal, which parks do use, and people on their lawns take note as well, they are dangerous, and they pose a risk. And the people who are most at risk are the children. And so in the spirit of Kids to the Parks, I would like to say that our rules about pesticides, herbicides in the grass should be more staunch. And I know there's state laws and all this kind of things, but the City Council is here to protect the people of this municipality. And with consideration for that, I hope that you do take this as an important thing, and we'll make a decision regardingly. I thank you so much for the City Council. You guys are doing a great job, and I just wanted to say that too. Good night.
Thanks, Brandon.
And I just changed something on the screen. I think we're all going to have the lights off or something.
Good evening.
I am Jan Romery, journalist and writer of Iowa City. Iowa City, the city of writers. There's only 3 designated city writers in the world. Iowa City is one of them. I write, therefore I am a writer. I liked Kurt Vonnegut, who got his degree here. He was quite a thinker. I have 2 questions to ask, and then I'm going to sit down. Oh, by the way, Susan Mims, thank you for closing the door on me today. Question 1. This is from Senator Elizabeth Warren on Charlie Rose. What are you going to do with the economic problem with 90% of the people getting nothing of the massive increasing wealth every year? Number 2, Independent Lens Frontline. What are you going to do with the social class problem with insanely huge disparities of income and equality going on for decades? And then I want to make 2 comments, and I'm going to sit down. It's not what you make for yourself. It's what you make of yourself. This country can no longer afford absolute abdications of moral, individual shared responsibility to life. The Pope is really getting wound up over this business stuff that's creating a lot of poor people. I'm going to sit down now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. Those are important questions, but we're not going to be able to address them at this particular moment. But thank you for asking. Anyone else? Good evening, Adil.
No more problems. Just I would like to congratulate myself and all the Sudanese people. Finally, America lifted the sanction against Sudan after 27 years of people suffering. And this sanction, as I said, is just punishing the people, not the government. And now America realized it is the right thing to lift this sanction. And we are very happy here and in Sudan. Other issue I would like to inform you that Ramadan will be next week on 27 also.
Adil, when does it start and when does it
In
end?
27 in the morning, if you want to fast, and I hope all of you fast on 27, start in the morning, 5 in the morning, nobody eat or drink or have sex or anything until 8:30 p.m. No water, nothing. And if you can fast one day, and the money for your lunch, we can support our children in Sudan, South Sudan. There is a war there, and the people, they need any help in south of Sudan. My mom from south of Sudan, my dad from north, but the children, they are suffering from this war. And America last week, they sent one ship with some wheat and food to these people. This is the first time within 27 years America sent aid to Sudan, and we appreciate that. But if you can announce everybody in Iowa to fast just one day, and this money we can support the children of South of Sudan. By the way, fasting is for your health, not for this religion, because Prophet Muhammad said in Arabic, "Sumu tasihhu." That means if you fast, you'll be healthy. And if you wanna not believe me, just try it. Try just to fast. If you're sick, if you fast, you'll be healthy. So I want the mayor and all the city council to support the south of Sudan by fasting just one day. If they didn't get any problem, you can fast 2 days, 3 days, and nobody will die. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. Adil, could I ask you, when does Ramadan end this year?
It starts 27, it is 1 month, 30 days.
1 month.
27 to the following month, so we have Eid, and I invite you from Eid from now. If you're fasting and you break your fasting with us, we celebrate the last day, like 26th of June, and we celebrate this day, and I hope there is activities on that day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
I was just going to say, would anybody else like to speak? I think the answer is yes.
Thank you, Mayor Throckmorton. My name is Charlie Easton, 11953 Canton Street. Just wanted to continue our conversation from your work session about the changes in state legislation that have made it apparently easier for individuals to bring weapons into this council chamber and other city properties. And I would like to ask if you would consider very carefully your response and resist the state legislature's actions if as much as can be done. As you know, many people come to these council chambers because the council invites people to come here. You have public comment periods. This one have comment periods for specific items that you're considering. And you have many other things that we celebrate in this space that where the public is invited. We just did a children's presentation or a youth awards presentation, which the council's been doing for years now, and that invites children, youth to come here. I'm affiliated with an organization that does that asks people to come to this meeting and talk to you in a public setting, and we rely upon people feeling safe in coming here and conversing with you about issues that are of concern to them. If they don't feel safe, they will not be inclined to attend, and our public purposes will not be fulfilled. So, and I think the presence, or the possible presence of weapons in this space will not, will inhibit people from actually participating in public involvement with you. So I hope you'll consider very carefully. I think Mayor Throgmorton outlined some possible approaches to the legislature's action, which I hope the city will pursue. I think the city has a policy now that says that if I have a weapon, if I'm carrying a weapon legally, it's under state law, and I come into this chamber with that weapon, then I can be charged with trespass or asked to leave. I think that's a good policy, and I think we should continue it. I can't take a weapon to the school where the students that were here earlier come from, where they go every day. I can't take a weapon in other places. I don't have an unlimited right to do anything I want with the weapons I have. So I hope you'll really buckle up and fight the state on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Anyone else? Seeing no one else, we will turn to item 6, planning and zoning matters. Item 6A, rezoning Deluxe Bakery. Ordinance conditionally rezoning approximately 3,440 square feet of property located at 812 South Summit Street from low-density single-family residential with historic district overlay RS 50HD to neighborhood commercial with historic district overlay CN1 OHD. This is first consideration. I should ask whether anybody's had any conversations about this that should be disclosed publicly. Okay, I don't see anybody. I'm going to open the public hearing. What did I do with my hammer? Open the public hearing. Good evening, John.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. John Yap, Development Services. The property in question is at 812 Summit Street, the Deluxe Bakery, Summit Street, south of Sheridan Avenue. The property is zoned single-family residential, as are all the other properties on Summit Street. This is an image of the property. It's a two-story mixed-use building with a bakery on the ground level and an apartment on the second level. The building was originally constructed in around 1900 and has had a commercial use on the first floor since that time. A variety of commercial uses over that time period. The property is owned residential, so it is what we call a legally non-conforming use. In other words, it's grandfathered in. And may be allowed to continue as a commercial use, but may not expand. The owner wishes to construct an addition onto the north side of the property, which would include a stair tower to provide access to the second story, as well as some ADA improvements for the entrance. Because it's grandfathered in and not allowed to expand, the intent of the rezoning is to allow that expansion to take place. The property is in the Summit Street Historic District, so any change to the exterior of the building, including the proposed addition, would have to be approved by the Historic Preservation Commission. A couple other views of the property. The neighborhood commercial zone is intended to provide small-scale retail sales and personal services in a neighborhood area within walking distance of properties. Allowed uses are restricted in size to promote neighborhood-serving businesses as opposed to big box stores, for example. In addition to the use being non-conforming, the parking is non-conforming. There are 2 parking spaces at the rear of the property. That limited amount of parking and limited opportunity to create more parking really restricts the types of uses that could go into this structure. For example, restaurants, because of the parking requirements, would not be able to occupy this property. The comprehensive plan supports neighborhood commercial areas, and I'll read a couple sentences from the comprehensive plan because I think they really describe what this property is. Neighborhood commercial areas can provide a focal point and a gathering space for a neighborhood. The businesses within a neighborhood commercial center should provide shopping opportunities within a convenient walking distance for the residents in the immediate area. The design of the neighborhood commercial center should have a pedestrian orientation with stores placed close to the street, but with sufficient open space to allow outdoor cafes and patios or landscaping, as shown in the picture of this property. In summary, the comprehensive plan supports neighborhood commercial within walking distance of residents. The property is in the Summit Street Historic District, and therefore exterior design will be controlled. The non-conforming parking will limit the types of businesses that can occupy the structure over time. And this is something I did not touch on in my presentation until now, but restricting the hours of operation and restricting the sale of alcohol and tobacco helps ensure the commercial use of the property remains neighborhood serving and compatible with residential living. The property is in very close proximity to other single-family structures, therefore those recommended conditions. Staff recommends approval, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? I don't see any. Thank you. Would anybody else like to address this proposed rezoning? Seeing no one, I need to ask whether the council, anybody on the council, is inclined to vote in accordance with the Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. If not, we'll have to do something else. So are you inclined to vote in favor? Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move first consideration.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. Discussion?
I'm very supportive of this. This has been, just an incredibly successful business. Neighborhood absolutely loves it. Busy all the time. Jamie Powers grew up here in Iowa City and left and came back, and we're always encouraging young people to come back and thrive and live in this community, and she's done exactly that and built just a very, very successful business. And I think the restrictions that go with this, with it being in the historic district, make it so that it'll still be very compatible with the neighborhood and a destination place, which I think is fantastic. So very supportive.
I was just going to say, I absolutely love everything about this property, totally supportive of this, and sort of a separate topic, but I think we need to do everything possible to encourage businesses like this. I think it's a perfect fit for the neighborhood, and major kudos to the owner and to everyone who's made this happen.
Yeah, a little gem is just getting a little better, for sure.
It sounds like there's support. I'm going to support it as well, but I want to note something that's not a conflict of interest, but my wife and I bought our wedding cake at this particular place. So
better recuse yourself.
That's a conflict.
My daughter got hers there too, and it was wonderful.
Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes. Motion carries 6-0. Item 6B, Comprehensive Plan Amendment. Resolution amending the comprehensive plan to address mitigating impact of redevelopment on existing tenants of multifamily buildings. I'm going to open the public hearing.
One of the specific actions called for in the Council's Affordable Housing Action Plan is to amend local ordinances to address impacts of tenant displacement associated with major site plans or redevelopment of multifamily properties, designed to increase notice and to foster greater communication with tenants. As many of you recall, this grew out of discussions related to the redevelopment of Rose Oaks, which was not a rezoning. So there was no legislative action that the city council could take. It was just a site plan. Site plans currently are reviewed to assure compliance with the city's codes and regulations. Once it's determined that they do comply, they must be approved. And then a building permit may be issued. What we are proposing here tonight is a comprehensive plan amendment that provides the policy basis for future proposed changes to the site plan ordinances, to require notification, communication with residents, what we're calling a transition plan for the residents. The comprehensive plan language proposed tonight is not regulatory, but it does provide the basis for future regulatory changes. Specifically, there are three proposed changes. Number one, to add a goal to the housing section in the comprehensive plan, stating mitigate the impact of redevelopment on occupants of proposed projects involving the remodeling or reconstruction of existing multifamily residential dwellings by fostering communication between property owners and occupants through sufficient notice requirements, and encouraging the developer to create thoughtful transition plans that seek to accommodate relocation needs of occupants. A similar statement would be added to the community vision statement in the comprehensive plan, stating fostering communication among owners, redevelopers, and occupants to mitigate the impact of redeveloping existing residential properties. And thirdly, adding a statement in the background housing section in the comprehensive plan. In reviewing the comprehensive plan for this item, we realize that there's very little reference to affordable housing documents in the comprehensive plan. So we wanted to tie the comprehensive plan to those documents with this statement. The city has several affordable housing related documents, including the update to the Affordable Housing Market Analysis, City Steps Consolidated Plan, which document housing issues and trends. These and future documents provide the basis for affordable housing related discussions, policies, and legislation. A couple other items noted in the staff memo. Some of the next steps staff will take is to propose amending the site plan review process. If these comprehensive plan proposals are adopted, that would be our next step, is the legislative step to amend the site plan chapter. And thirdly, to update the good neighbor policy. Currently, the good neighbor policy is used for subdivisions, rezonings, and special exceptions. It has not been used for site plans, but we would amend that policy, which is it's an administrative policy, to include site plans in that umbrella. Staff recommends approval. Planning and Zoning Commission recommends approval.
Thank you, John. Any questions for John? Hearing none, thank you. Anybody else want to address this topic?
I'm Charlie Eastham again, 953 Canton Street. I just want to compliment the staff for taking this initiative. I think, as far as I know, this proposal is before you, and their future ideas will come before you, primarily because the staff did this on their own initiative. And I think that's a great thing. Compliment Jeff, the city manager, Mr. Yap, and all the other planning staff. So can you give them a raise or something?
Not a big one. Though they deserve it, of course. Anybody else? Okay, seeing no one else, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Thomas. Discussion?
Well, I guess I'm really pleased to see that we're taking these steps, and this is a classic example of, using the tools that we have to address the policy issues in front of us. So I'm quite pleased that staff has come up with this.
Yeah, me too. We had a difficult time with the Rose Oak situation. I'm very pleased to see this particular amendments being presented to us. I know we have subsequent conversations that will have to take place having to do with the transition plan, having to do with the good neighbor policy and so on. So I look forward to those discussions. Anybody else? Seeing no one, roll call?
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims? Yes. Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6C, rezoning Scott Boulevard northwest of First Avenue. An ordinance rezoning 12.28 acres of property from low-density single-family residential, RS5, and low-density multifamily residential, RM12, to planned development overlay low-density single-family residential, OPD5, zone, and planned development overlay low-density multifamily residential, OPD RM12, zone, and approving a preliminary sensitive areas development plan for the Larson subdivision, a two-lot residential subdivision located north of Scott Boulevard between Hickory Heights Lane and First Avenue. This is second consideration, but staff has requested expedited action.
I move that the rule requiring the ordinances must be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended, that the second consideration and vote be waived, and that the ordinance be voted on for final passage at this time.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. I should note that I was supposed to ask for ex parte disclosure. Has anybody had any conversations? Okay, thank you. It was on the next page. I just didn't see it. There it goes. Okay, so motion's on the floor. Discussion? Seeing none. Roll call?
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Move ordinance be finalized at this time.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. Discussion? Hearing none. Roll call?
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6D, Orchard Subdistrict Form-Based Code. An ordinance amending Title 14 zoning, Article 2G, riverfront crossings and east side mixed-use districts, form-based development standards, to add zoning standards for the Orchard Subdistrict. This is second consideration, but again, staff requests expedited action.
I move that the rule requiring that ordinances must be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended, that the second consideration and vote be waived, and that the ordinance be voted on for final passage at this time.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Taylor. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Move final adoption at this time.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Thomas. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6E, rezoning Orchard Court. An ordinance conditionally rezoning approximately .705 acres of property located at 619 and 627 Orchard Court from planned development overlay low-density single-family OPD 5 zone to Riverfront Crossings Orchard RFCO zone. This is second consideration, but staff also requests expedited action. And I want to ask for ex parte disclosure. Has anybody had any conversations about this? Good. We can move ahead.
I move the rule requiring the ordinances must be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended, that the second consideration and vote be waived, and that the ordinance be voted on for final passage at this time.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Taylor. Discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes. Motion carries 6-0.
Move final adoption at this time.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Thomas. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
Motion carries 6-0. Item 6F, rezoning 202 North Lynn Street. Ordinance conditionally rezoning approximately 4,550 square feet of property from Central Business Service, CB2 zone, to Central Business Support, CB5 zone, located at 202 North Lynn Street. This is second consideration.
Move second consideration.
Wait,
Oh, sorry.
Are there any ex parte disclosures? I should say that I had a brief chat with Nick Craig, who's the owner of Bricks. Nick told me he favors the rezoning, and I said thanks, basically. So, but I did have that conversation. So go ahead, please.
Okay. Move second consideration.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. Discussion. John.
Mayor, members of council, at your last meeting when this project was discussed, there was some discussion of the design review process. So I wanted to briefly present that process to you, give you a flavor for what that process entails. Design review is a staff committee currently comprised of representatives from the urban planning, building inspections, and city manager's office. So it's a cross-section of staff and backgrounds. When design review is required for a project, the applicants submit building elevations and images prior to requesting a building permit. This process allows for a detailed review and discussion of the exterior elements of a building. Depending on the location and the zone in which a property is located, there are different standards. For this particular property, it would be reviewed under the Central Business Site Development Standards. And I'd like to briefly run through some of those standards with you. They have to do with parking and loading, location, and how that parking is concealed from view. They have to do with vehicular access to the parking and to minimize traffic congestion and to preserve the street frontage. Landscaping plans must be submitted for review. Dumpster and recycling bin location is reviewed. There's a requirement that the ground floor ceiling height must be at least 14 feet in the central business zones. That's to preserve the ability for a variety of viable commercial businesses. Primary building entrances are reviewed and must be distinguished by canopies, awnings, recesses, raised cornices, or other architectural details. Access to the residential portion of the building is reviewed, and there's a requirement that they must have a separate entrance. Not always the case in some of our older buildings. Minimum of 50% of the facade, street-facing facade, must be of clear and highly transparent windows. In other words, storefront windows. And for buildings greater than 50 feet in length, the facade must be broken up into modules to give the appearance of individual storefronts. So the method of achieving that is reviewed. In this particular case, the applicant has been open about their desire to seek a floor-to-area ratio bonus. That's a method by which a building can go taller if they meet certain either architectural or public goals. In the CB5 zone, the base floor-to-area ratio is 3, meaning 3 floors of square footage for every 1 square foot of lot area. With the bonuses, you can get up to 5, meaning 5 square feet of floor area for every 1 square foot of lot area. And that's where the 5 in CB5 comes from. Masonry or architectural metal finish can achieve a bonus. Provision of a theater, funds for street furniture, lighting, and landscaping, provision of pedestrian activity areas, usable open space for residents, such as courtyards, terraces, and rooftop gardens, and adaptive reuse of historic landmark. Not the case for this property, but it has been in other properties. So in other words, it's an incentive-based system for achieving greater architectural design as well as public goods And the incentive is greater floor area for the building. So all of these factors are reviewed by the Design Review Committee in working with individual applicants prior to a building permit being issued. Any questions about that process? Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, would anybody else like to address this topic?
Well, I'm going to be supportive
Wait,
as.
wait, I think we're still in the public hearing, are we?
We don't have a public hearing.
Oh, right, sorry, but I want to make sure anybody wants to speak about it,
Go ahead.
speaks, so. Sorry.
No, that's okay.
Hi.
Hello. Is this the Pearson property we're talking about?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. My name is Linda McGuire, and I'm a longtime Northside neighbor, and I will submit my information. It's so exciting to see development wanting to come into the Northside marketplace, because Lord knows we are a neighborhood that has been, going back to the founding of our neighborhood. And I think, this may be alternative facts, I'm sorry, but I think that this is the third rezoning request that we've had in that area. And that's fine. That's the way that it works. But at a point where an area of like 4 or 5 or 6 square blocks starts having people come in and say, we want to rezone this spot, and we want to rezone this spot, and we want to rezone, now it's the third one. I really urge the council to think about this. It is an area, and it is an old neighborhood, and it is an old commercial district. And, we have the opportunity to preserve what's there. And I'm not speaking out against any particular rezoning. What I am speaking out against is your approach of letting individual one-by-one properties come in, because we can't really respond to that. So my request is that the wonderful consultants that you've brought in to help us vision the south side and the north side, it's been very helpful to us as a community to think about what we want there. And we will be really squandering a wonderful opportunity up in the North Side Marketplace to recapture some of the history. Like 2 weeks ago, I went down into the beer caves. How many of you have done that? We have a rich Czech, German, Irish history that was all in that area. And so think about preserving history, being careful not to overdevelop, and particularly parking. It's a real issue. If we want to have destination restaurants, and we're losing those, but whatever, to think about the whole picture. That's, I guess, what I would suggest that you do. So let me see. Oh, aging in place. That's a whole thing that's being brought up, and that's really good because we love here's the thing, the walkability of our neighborhood to downtown is really important to keep. So I will put this here for the record. Thank you.
Linda, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
I didn't quite follow what you were saying with regard to parking.
With regard to parking?
Parking, yeah.
Well, I don't know about the CB5. Is that the name of it? But what I understand is there may be a request for part of any of these individual zoning things to waive down the number of parking area spots. And we seniors really like our cars, so we're not willing to give those up. You shouldn't fall for that. But also, you know, that city parking lot, and I don't know what your plans are for that, but that is so critical to the, I was talking to John, one of the owners at Bluebird, the other day at our community meeting, and it was great. And he says how important it is for him. And let me tell you, that's a really hot restaurant right now to come to our neighborhood. And people come up and say, I can't find a place to park, because they want to go there. So any requests that you get to downgrade parking in that neighborhood will only hurt the businesses that are already there. My 2 cents.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening.
Hi there. My name is Mike Huber. I'm about a 10-year resident in the North End. And when I was younger, grew up by Hickory Hill Park and in the Goosetown neighborhood. I like my cars as well, for obvious reasons, for those of you that know me. But I would say I'm really happy and excited about this project. I might come at it from a little bit of a different angle. As I understand it, it actually doesn't reduce the parking, so it doesn't remove parking. And I want to be able to stay in the neighborhood when I don't want to mow my yard and cut the grass. And I understand there's a senior component or aging in place that's proposed for this project. I also think that from what I've seen so far, they've done a really, really good job of trying to make it blend into the neighborhood and look as I would want it to look. And as much as I like the history and remember going to Pearson's as a kid and having a milkshake, the building that's there now is certainly not a good use of its space. And I just want to give my 2 cents. Probably less 2 cents than Linda gave. I respect her opinion. We're all good North Siders. But I welcome the idea. I welcome the idea of the aging in place component. I welcome the idea that it would have a nice ground floor element that could be a restaurant or other sort of retail. And the talk of a rooftop garden is kind of nice and exciting and gives a great mix to the neighborhood. That's the appeal, in my opinion, to that neighborhood is the mix. Lots of different styles of architecture. Everything doesn't match. It doesn't all look the same. And I think this building would do a really good job of preserving that. And the developers, I think, have done a good job of proving that they're very interested in that, and they're very interested in the town and have a long time history of that. That's my 2
Thank you,
cents.
Mike. Could I ask you a quick question?
Of course.
I didn't catch your last name. Could
Huber,
you-
Mike Huber.
Huber, yeah. Thanks.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening, Ofer.
Excuse me. My name is Ofer Savan. I live at 801 Brown. So I'm a homeowner in the North Side and a business owner in the North Side, and I'm a Horace Mann parent. And I guess while we're at it, I went to preschool in the North Side on Reno Street there. Excuse me. My building, which I own, and my restaurant are immediately next to this property. So as a resident and a business owner, I have as much to gain or lose as anyone else about this project. So one of the issues is the height. I don't see the height as a problem. It matches the building across the street that the coffee shop is in. Tall buildings mean more customers and more neighbors, friends, in an environmentally sound way. Otherwise, people can live in the suburbs and drive all over the place. And that's kind of in the past. It's not the 1950s anymore. People want to live close in. They don't have to drive everywhere. As far as the parking goes, I don't know, in my opinion, new buildings should be prohibited from providing any parking. I don't understand why we're trying to encourage car ownership at all. I know that other of my restaurant owners in the neighborhood don't agree, and I definitely have a lot of drive-up traffic. But it's worth noting that the highest rents and the most desirable properties are in the Ped Mall, where you cannot drive. Because if you remove cars, you will fill it up with people, because people are way cooler than cars. So I really don't understand. And like you mentioned, It's a net. There's no change in the amount of parking. I also used to go to Pearson when I was a kid before getting shots at Cameron Meyer's office. So, but those days are long gone. It's been a parking lot for 7 or 8 years now. It's not particularly good use of space. One nice thing about the parking lot, however, is a planter there, which sometimes there's a little duck there with her little things. She wasn't there this year, but she's been here a few years. The design that I've seen is fairly attractive. I don't like how it goes all the way up to the corner. It's too crowded. I talked to the developers, and they seemed willing to put some kind of design element where the open space on the corner, maybe under, the building would be above it, but maybe open underneath. I think if they're willing to sacrifice that valuable real estate for, more or less eternity, for the benefit of the neighborhood, and I think that's a good sign. I think if they insist on bringing the building all the way to the corner, then I can't support the project at all. Because there'll just be the street and the sidewalk, and there's nowhere to hang out. And, people want a place to mill around, and the planter's great. My kids climb on it. There's ducks in there. It's a place to congregate. The north side, if we don't increase the density down there, we're going to lose out to development on the south side, which is happening, like Riverfront Crossing, which is great. I'm not trying to compete and beat the south side, but we need to stay on our toes and keep it competitive. We need more retail space down there. Restaurants come and go, usually sometimes for personal reasons, so I don't think that the zoning has anything to do with why certain restaurants have closed recently or not. People do want in on the neighborhood. People do want to retire in that neighborhood where there's very little, I don't know of any condos or any nice place for older people. I would like to stay on the north side when I'm grown up. I do not want a 2,400 square foot house. I would like an apartment with no car. And I know there's other people like me. It would be nice maybe if there's some low-income housing in this project. I'm not sure if that's being addressed or not. I think those are my views, and I've covered everything.
Thank you, Over. Anyone else?
Ex parte. I met with Ross. I need to. Sure. Is that when we were?
Good evening, Ross.
Good evening. Thank you again, Mr. Mayor and City Council. A couple of reasons why I wanted to come up and speak tonight. One is to address any questions or concerns that you've had from the public tonight or from last meeting. The other is to talk about what has happened since last meeting and to talk about the steps that we've done to move forward. The first thing that I'd like to comment on is the parking as it relates to senior housing. And Linda, thank you for that. I agree 100% with you that seniors, like I said last meeting as well, they don't want to give up cars. If you're going to age in place, it's not giving up your entire lifestyle. This is meant to be a transition and not an end-of-the-line project. So with that said, the way that the parking spots work right now, the senior housing would each have one parking spot. It may not be the two that most people have been used to, but one car is generally sufficient. And in my conversations with seniors a weird term. It's 55 plus. 55 is really the start of age in place. I mean, it can truly be going from empty nester and being able to be here for 25, 35 years. And that's what I'm excited about in that sense. With that said, I did want to address real quickly how this building works in regards to height and parking. And right now, the plan that I have, it shows 5 stories. And even though it's a conceptual plan, I am very well closely committed. One of the things that I'm not committed to is exactly how it lays out. I have spoken with Ofer a few different times, and corner cut, very important to not only he, but other people. And as we saw in the paper this week, we saw that the old Pearsons had a corner cut. And that could be a great community space. All of these issues I would like to work out in design review. I am fully, and I will say this at the next meeting as well, I am fully 100% committed to senior housing. I do not believe that I can do 5 stories here without doing senior housing. Economically, the way that it would work, should I not do senior housing and try and do 5 stories, it would be 2 units per floor, and then the top floor or one floor would have to be one large 1-bedroom unit. No developer in this town would speculate on that. So anything other than senior housing will not, it will make it so that this building is not 5 stories tall. The parking I wanted to address is that some restaurant owners have expressed concern that the parking will further burden the neighborhood. One of the things that I've tried to do to address that is that a tenant who I'm having some fairly serious negotiations with right now, they would not burden the neighborhood any further than it would. It would not be a use that would require extra parking. It would not generate more foot traffic or cars in the neighborhood. So I want to say that I'm taking all of this very seriously from you. And I would like to continue to work forward to address all of the concerns of not only yourselves, but the community. I did want to clarify one thing, and I wanted to announce it one more time, is that coming up here on May 25th at 5:30 p.m. at the Iowa City Public Library Meeting Room A, we are going to be having a good neighbor meeting, and I'd like to ask the neighbors and whomever would like to be there to further comment on the design of the building. The reason for the timing of that date, that I booked that right after planning on and zoning. I booked it on April 11th. City Library is full up until May 25th from April 11th. And I wanted to use that location because it's a neutral public venue. And I wanted to choose that time because it's a time that generally people are getting off work and they can stop by if they would like to voice their opinions. I wanted to say that since the last meeting, I've spoken with several members of TRAIL, which is the senior living community in the north side, and I've had good conversations with them, and we're trying to set up a more formal meeting as graduation, Mother's Day has happened. It's not happened yet, but that will happen, I'm sure, prior to the next and final consideration. I've also spoken to business owners of the north side as well as, to 7 business owners of the north side, as well as multiple community members out there. And I'm only saying that to orchestrate again that what I'm asking here is, I'm asking for a rezoning. And I'm asking for this land use to be approved because I believe that it can really benefit our community. I would like this land use, and I understand that it is an ask, but I am fully committed to senior housing, and I would like this land use to be approved as is stated. I think it opens up the door for this diverse project. And by diverse project, I mean that a mixture of commercial on the main level, 1-bedroom pseudo workforce housing. There's not an affordable housing component right now. Like I said last meeting, I serve with the Affordable Housing, with the Housing Fellowship of Iowa City. And if I get a stronger feeling there, I'd absolutely be open to it. But the senior housing, the age in place is something that I'm fully committed to. So one level to serve the restaurant workers or whomever near downtown in the north side, 2 levels, which is half of the residential building, to serve age in place seniors, and 1 level for people who would like to live there and who would like to own their units. With a rooftop terrace that I believe could either serve the commercial or the community or building, which that would be a separate council proposal. I would like to thank you all for your time on this, and I'd like to open it up to questions for me.
So Ross, if I heard you correctly, you said if you do not have the senior housing component, the building will not be 5 stories?
100% correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Yeah. Okay, if we have conversation and then feel good reason to ask Ross or anybody else a question, we could still do that, could we not? Yeah. Okay.
I need to disclose ex parte. I met with Ross and the architect. It's been over a month ago. It was before the last meeting, which I missed, so I didn't think about it. But I did meet with him, and he just showed me the rough plans at that time. So I want to make that clear that I did meet with him.
I waved at Ross yesterday. Okay, so would any, let's see, we're not having a public hearing, right?
No.
Nope.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address this topic?
I'm just really curious about, and I am not against senior housing and whatever, but how does that get enforced? You know, when a developer says they want to do that, and we want it, but doesn't the market prevail at a certain point? Is there any way that the city keeps track of that?
Good question, Linda. We'll probably discuss that in some fashion here in a second.
Would you like me to address that, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
The reason why that's able to be enforced and why the building cannot be 5 stories without the senior housing is once the plan is submitted to the design review, I will have to enter into a covenant for 55 plus, and that goes for eternity. The second that I enter into that covenant, and it is recorded at the recorder's office, no one can occupy that property or purchase it who is under the age of 55 years old. As far as the parking and how parking is provided for that, that's a little bit different there. That's something that's more up in the air. I am 100% committed to, just from, I don't think I can sell them to seniors without at least one single parking space. I'm sorry, I'm addressing the council. But that's how it would work, is that for me to get my 5 stories, I can't do so with the parking that I'm able to provide without providing senior housing. And once that is done, that is how the covenant would come into effect.
Thank you, Ross. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody else who would like to address the topic. So, discussion among our council members.
Well, I'm going to support this. I think it's a great revitalization of what everybody, I think, has agreed is an underutilized piece of property right now. I think the preliminary designs we've seen in terms of size and everything fit in with what's on the other 3 corners of that intersection. I think that the idea of more senior housing in the downtown area is certainly in demand. I mean, we've had people basically want us to underwrite the cost of really workforce housing, but for seniors, you know, in the downtown area. And these are people, some of whom have retired from the university, and I can only imagine they have pretty good retirement accounts because I know the positions they've had at the university, and they're saying, I can't afford to live downtown. And I'm like, yeah, maybe you can't, but I don't think the taxpayer should pay for you to live down there either. And so to get this kind of housing in the north side without, you know, I just think it works really well in all aspects. I think because of the limited size of the lot and the parking limitations that are there, which obviously brings up restricted use under our current zoning policies, another commercial space of some sort. I think it fits in really, really well. I think Ross has obviously made a lot of effort to really talk to the people in the area, both residents and business owners, and see what they think will work well. Sounds like he's open in terms of looking at some of the design components. I kind of like the idea of the cutback on the corner. I know right across the street. It's done that way and it looks nice. So I'm very supportive, and we've got the design review process to take care of those other issues, so I will be supporting.
I think it's a great infill project. It's taking basically half a building that was one story and a bunch of parking that will now be used underneath. Will be a great addition to that area without taking away from the neighborhood. The size seems to be right, especially with the building across the street. And of course, I always have to add a little history. My mother worked at Pearson's as a soda jerk 70-some years ago, so I think it's a great location. People have walked there for years before there was cars, when all the high schools were downtown. So I think it hasn't changed that much over the years. The north side is still a very vibrant area that is walkable, and I think this will only add to it.
I would before speaking to the project, support Linda's comments regarding a more comprehensive approach toward the north side planning, and we do have a real opportunity with Opticos on board. This is part of our north side neighborhood planning area. I know that, I think it was 5 years ago when I worked as a citizen at that time on the rezoning of the Lynn Bloomington corner, that I was concerned with the future of the north side, because with the Lynn Bloomington, we had a rezoning opportunity like this. And that rezoning opportunity gave us an opportunity to get a little bit better fit on that corner than a standard CB2 by right zoning would have allowed. The classic, in my mind, comparison is looking at the Red Avocado building, which was zone CB2. There was no opportunity to adjust the zoning to get a better fit, and that's what we ended up with there. So I do think that a form-based code for the north side marketplace would be a really useful strategy as we move forward. I'd really like to avoid this parcel by parcel zoning that we've been seeing. I think that's a very piecemeal approach, which is not the most effective. With that being said, I think the project, I really appreciate Ross's commitment to this project, his concerns about meeting with the neighborhood and the larger community in terms of the design and the use of the building. I do have some concerns about the height. I think, if you look at that corner, the average height of the buildings, and I know we've been speaking about it as CB5, but if you look at their actual heights, they average 3 stories. I think we can solve that problem architecturally, but it is a concern to me. 5 stories I do tend to view as more of a downtown building height, and I think all of us understand that the north side is not really part of the downtown. It's a separate neighborhood commercial area that flexes between the neighborhood, the north side neighborhood, and the commercial district. So the scale of that is extremely fragile. But I think it's a good team, it's a good concept, and I'll be supporting it.
No, I think in addition to, liking the design, I think the way Ross has gone about this from sort of start to finish has been extraordinarily thoughtful. And I really appreciate you mentioning the public meeting at the library and sort of that neutral location for residents to share their concerns. I've really liked how you've gone about this process from start to finish. I do share Linda's concern, though, because I do feel like we do a lot of development by these sort of increments where we have these intense discussions around one space, and then we go to another space. And I think it's right to ask the question that, okay, I think it does work here, and I think the height probably works here, but I think it is right to ask the question that we should be thinking as a block, as the larger district itself, and set the vision for the neighborhood and let the development fill in, much the same we've done with the Riverfront Crossings District. I think that you have done some good efforts to try to make it contextually with the rest of the adjacent buildings. I think in terms of the design, I think that was very thoughtful. But I think it also comes down to, I keep going back to the CB2. As I understand it, if you wanted to do a 3-story building with our parking requirements, if you wanted to do that, it'd be impractical. And I think that absolutely underscores the need at some point to revisit what we're doing to the CB2 parking, because I think, frankly, we think about what makes this place work. I think a lot of it is the scale of the buildings. So I do think we need to actually address that. But I am going to be supportive of it because I think that there are a lot of parts about the project that work. And I think in particular, the support that you've gotten from the neighborhood as well as from the adjacent business owners, I think I've placed considerable weight on. And I could certainly imagine a different process where this wouldn't have gone through in the way that it did. So with that, I'm going to be supportive of it.
I'm also very supportive of it. I think all of the things that you've taken into consideration, including the terrace on the upper part, because there's not a lot of green stuff in that area. And I think keeping the character, the feel of the neighborhood, because as it stands now, that building there, yes, it has the feel and the history of Pearson's and everybody, their egg salad sandwich, their coffee, their soda malt or whatever, but it's not the same. It's not that Pearson's. It doesn't have that feel anymore. And I think it needs something like that, something new and vibrant. And I'd love to see a soda fountain in the in the lower part, but whatever. I think it's going to be a great addition.
Well, I think we know how this vote's going to go in general, but I want to raise a concern. And I've been thinking a lot more deeply about this proposal since we first held our first reading 2 weeks ago. I continue to believe it's a perfect location for providing older Iowa City residents with a great site for senior housing or aging in place or whatever we want to call it. And I am absolutely convinced that Ross is fully committed to the concept. And I understand that having these kinds of residential units in this location would be a very big plus. I think I really emphasized that point in our last meeting. But I need to go back to something else I said during our May 2nd meeting. At the time, I said that rezoning to CB5 is consistent with the comp plan. I've had a lot more time to think about this, and I think the question is important because, as I understand it, at least the first thing we need to decide is whether the proposed rezoning is consistent with the central district portion of the comp plan. So my sense is that the rezoning to CB5 is not inconsistent with the central district portion of the comp plan, but the 5-story height of the anticipated building is inconsistent with the comp plan. When discussing the north side, and so I want to detail why I think that, when discussing the north side marketplace, the central district plan states on page 58, and I quote, adopt zoning regulations to ensure that new development is consistent with the existing Main Street commercial character of the area and compatible with surrounding residential neighborhoods. In other words, I'm continuing the quote here, in other words, encourage 2 to 3-story buildings located close to the street, storefront windows, accessible and attractive building entrances, and parking located behind or beneath buildings. So, my concern is that it looks to me like a 5-story building would significantly exceed the heights contemplated in the comprehensive plan and would be significantly out of scale with buildings immediately to the north and east of the proposed building. And I suspect a 5-story building would significantly increase the market value of those adjacent and nearby properties, and thereby increase the market pressure to build larger structures on those properties. I think there'd be a ripple effect that would move its way through the north side marketplace. So I want to see the property redeveloped, but I think it really has to be done in a manner that is consistent with the identity and scale of the north side marketplace. So with that in mind, my sense is that we need to condition the rezoning to CB5 upon limiting the height of any new building to not more than 4 stories. So I understand that this differs from what others have said. I think my inclination tonight is to vote no. And then it seems clear that the total vote will be 5-1 in favor. But I do have a concern about that, and I wanted to express that concern as clearly as I can. So with that, we could have further discussion. Anybody want to?
Well, Jim, I think that gets into this question of, so often we've talked about our zoning framework and our regulatory requirements and our comprehensive plan, and they're not consistent. And so I think to Ross's point, to do a 2 to 3 story with the CB2 type framework wouldn't be feasible, at least as I understand it.
I'm not arguing for 2
Well,
or
but that's
3.
the point, though, is I really think we need to make sure that there's more alignment, because even if he wanted to do that, but I share those concerns. But, I mean, it sort of is what it is. But I do think we need to look at the parking at some point for another day.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
No.
Cole?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-1.
Motion to accept correspondence.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Mims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7, 2017 Hebel Avenue improvements. Resolution approving plans, specifications, form of agreement, and estimate of cost for the construction of the 2017 Hebel Avenue improvements project, establishing amount of bid security to accompany each bid, directing city clerk to post notice to bidders, and fixing time and place for receipt of bids. I'll open the public hearing. Seeing no one, I'm going to close the, well, is John talking over there?
No, he's not going to talk.
No.
It's not, okay. I'll close the public hearing.
Move to resolution.
Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Mims. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 8, Bread Garden lease. Resolution to approve a ground lease agreement with Bread Garden of Iowa City, LC, for Ped Mall space adjacent to their downtown location. I'll open the public hearing.
Mayor, I thought I would walk you through this proposal here, if that's all right.
Sure.
This is a resolution for a ground lease to the Bread Garden of Iowa City. It's approximately 668 square feet of pedestrian mall space that they currently use and have used for some years as their outdoor sidewalk cafe space. This lease would be a 20-year lease for that space for a rate of $14.70 per square foot, and that would be adjusted every 5 years on an inflationary index. It's a triple net lease. And as a little bit of background, you're all well aware that of the popularity of the outdoor dining, particularly in the downtown area, but it's certainly not unique to Iowa City or our downtown. And over the past several years, we have expanded our outdoor dining options offerings quite considerably. You know that we have expanded into some select planter areas downtown, outside of sidewalk areas. And a few years ago, we actually expanded into the street on Dubuque Street, which has proven to be, I think, a successful test run there. In addition, we're seeing a lot more interest in rooftop space for private, both residential and commercial uses. And we're also seeing more outdoor space on private property being dedicated to the open-air dining. So no doubt that it's a very popular offering, and I think most would agree that it brings with it tremendous benefits to particularly an urban area like the downtown. There's a street presence and energy about that type of environment that not only benefits those businesses, but benefits surrounding businesses that may not be in a food-related business. The way our sidewalk cafes currently work, they're essentially a 9-month operation. We require the removal between December 1st and the end of February. We do this on the sidewalk cafe locations primarily for ease and efficiency of snow removal operations. So in other words, if we lived in a different climate and it was nice 12 months out of the year, we would allow the cafes to operate 12 months out of the year. We were approached by the Bread Garden, who sought to extend their semi-open area that they have on their property out onto their sidewalk cafe and essentially provide a 12-month experience where they have only been able to provide the 9-month experience in years past. And this was something that we had not contemplated before, and it took us a while to think through all the variables here. But I want to walk you through staff's thought process on this, and kind of lead you to where we are now, which is recommending that we move forward with this lease. So in considering this request, I think you have to consider multiple factors. First and foremost, it's to consider whether this type of extension would have any type of detrimental impact on the surrounding public space. Anytime you lease public land, you have to think about what that impact is to the public space, not only the space that you're leasing, but how that affects the public's use of the space around that. As I mentioned before, this space is already used 9 months out of the year for the private business purpose of the Bread Garden. We have not received any complaints on the way that the Bread Garden uses that cafe space or any intrusions into how the public uses the space around it. I think most that you would talk to, if not all, would talk about how that space positively contributes to that area across from the library there. The creation of a structure over this area would not, in this particular location, would not impact pedestrian travel. It would also not significantly impact the view shed into the pedestrian mall. I don't think that's the case for all properties in the Ped Mall, but certainly I think this one is unique enough in the way this area lays out. And I'll elaborate that on a little bit. This particular part of the Ped Mall, if you observe the way the traffic moves through there, either during cafe season or outside of cafe season, the through traffic tends to stay between the library and the row of the trees to the south there. So even when those cafes are gone, the public tends to funnel themselves through that narrow space. And thus, that's not the same with all the other parts of the Ped Mall. And so the creation of this structure doesn't really change, in my view, the pedestrian flow throughout that area. The structure would not impose any additional public safety risks or require a detour of our fire lane. It does not detract from any nearby historic structures, and the Bread Garden would assume all responsibility for upkeep, both inside and immediately around the structure itself. The second consideration is how this structure would impact the aesthetics of the Ped Mall. The Bread Garden is uniquely situated for this type of improvement, in my view. They already kind of naturally flow onto the Ped Mall the way their building's designed. They have the indoor area that has the opening there. It feels like an outdoor cafe experience. I think a transition into this would be very seamless. You could think of other examples where it may not be so seamless the way that a lot of businesses are laid out there, but I think this one would look like a natural extension, and hopefully if we move forward and all said and done, it would look like it was originally planned with the building itself. I think lastly you have to think about the precedent and what does this set the city up for in terms of other requests. And certainly the city is under no obligation to do this with any other businesses. And if we receive those inquiries, we would go through that same process. We would look at pedestrian traffic patterns, view sheds, public safety, snow removal, the impact to historic properties, not just the building itself, but nearby historic properties, the aesthetics and everything else that I talked about. I found myself going through a variety of scenarios with existing cafes in the Ped Mall, and I find it very difficult to find another situation in which this may repeat itself. So I want to say this is a unique circumstance here. That said, somebody surely will come forward with some ideas, and I think we'd have to, again, consider them the same way in which we considered this one here. Finally, as I mentioned, the lease rate would be $14.70 per square foot. This is compared to $5 a square foot, which is our standard sidewalk cafe, so it would be a considerable increase. Over the 20-year lease period, it would be $200,000 or more in lease revenue to the city. However, as I mentioned in the memo, I think that shouldn't be the primary consideration before you tonight. I think it's an important factor, but it's not the most important factor when looking at this. I do have some renderings on the screen. If you would like to see those, I can go down and pull those up. Thank you, Ashley. And then I can answer any questions that you have. Jim Montanaro is in the audience and can speak on behalf of the Bread Garden if you have questions. Should be 3 pictures, Ashley, if you want to cycle through them.
Oh. Nope. I don't know if I can.
What would the exterior be made of?
Looks like a glass and steel, but Jim, do you want to elaborate on that?
Metal and glass.
I think the answer was metal and glass, right? Yeah. Thanks, Jim. Okay. Does anybody want to ask Jeff any questions? Or Jim, for that matter?
Jeff, regarding other properties, if they were to do something or want to do something similar to this, we hold control over that. So
Complete
we
discretion.
sort of may set some sort of precedent, but the bottom line is we retain the discretion to choose each particular project.
Yeah, I have no doubt that when others see us moving forward with this, if we do indeed, there will be other requests of this nature. But again, I think it's pretty unique the way that this building lays out and the way that the Ped Mall operates in this particular location.
There's a setback there a little bit because of the Sheridan comes out and has a second, or the little raised area there, that this actually aligns with that raised area, so it really is not protruding that much more than that area that's already there.
Well, it's very clear the current outdoor cafe is tremendously popular and a great success, a real asset to the Ped Mall and downtown and Iowa City in general. And, my sense is that this will only enhance its success. So I worried a little bit when I first was thinking about it that it is basically privatization of public space. So I worried about that a little bit, but there's an outdoor cafe there already for 9 months out of the year. It's very successful, so I'm going to support this for sure.
Do you want to close the public hearing
Oh, good idea. I'm going to.
if we're done?
Would anybody else like to speak to us about this topic? So, nice to see you, Jim.
Good to see you, too. All I really want to say is that we've spent the time, and we're going to spend the money to make this a beautiful addition to the Bread Garden, and we're going to make it so that it has that garden feel. And as you see the wall on the north, it parallels what we have on the wall that's already in the indoor patios, we'd say. And they're called nano walls, so they can flex, so that we can open it up and shut it down depending on the weather that we're confronting at that time. But it'd be heated, so I mean, I can see it in the wintertime when it's snowing. We're out there, we're eating, and we participate in the Ped Mall, which we don't get to do because it's cold, but we're going to be able to do that here, and I'm excited about it. And all I can tell you is that it's not an inexpensive thing to do, but we think it's a part of what we want the future to be with the Bread Garden, and I appreciate any input that you have that could make it better, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Jim. Anyone else want to address this? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. Discussion.
I'm just excited to see it go forward, and I'm not worried about the precedent. I think when you look at the layout with this particular building and business versus others in the space, that we just have to look at everyone on their own, and I think this will be a great use here.
Yeah, I'm especially, as Jim seemed to suggest, those 3 months, the Ped Mall could use more life through the winter. And so I've always loved those sorts of spaces where, you you're exposed to the elements visually, but you're nice and warm at the same time. And this will provide that. So I think it actually will be a very pleasing winter space to be in.
Further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 9, open container amendment. Ordinance amending Title 4 Alcoholic Beverages, Chapter 5 Prohibitions and Restrictions, Section 5 Open Containers, to allow open containers to be carried from one licensed premises directly into another. This is pass and adopt.
Move to adoption.
Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Thomas. Discussion. Hearing none, roll call.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 10, Iowa City Downtown District Block Party Possession of Alcohol Agreement. Resolution approving an agreement with the Downtown District to allow the sale, consumption, and possession of beer and wine during the block party event on city streets and city plaza.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. Discussion. We had a meeting of the Partnership for Alcohol Safety today. Eric Gores, who works in the city attorney's office, did a great job of describing the various steps that have been taken by the city council since 2000, Jeff, 2001, with regard to excessive drinking, especially by underage people. And, that one of the things he touched on was the fact that we are considering this amendment. And he placed it in the context of that whole flow of actions that have taken place over the last 15 plus years. He did it very well also. So, I've had a tiny little bit of concern about whether this might lead to sort of a backtracking with regard to trying to make sure that our underage drinkers, residents don't drink too much. But I've persuaded myself that won't be the case. I think it'll be a really good experiment. I look forward to seeing how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
To that point, Jim, I think this is something I think the city is doing a better job at getting right in terms of the balances that we're trying to achieve. And I think of, for example, like Taste of Madison, where you have essentially open container throughout the state capitol, and they balance that very well. So it's good to see that we are doing this. And I think especially during the summertime makes a big difference for me, as opposed to during the school year.
Any other discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 11, Workforce Housing Tax Credits, Cardinal Point West. Resolution in support of the Cardinal Point West LLC application for Workforce Housing Tax Incentives Program from the Iowa Economic Development Authority to construct residential housing at Deer Creek Road and Camp Cardinal Boulevard, and committing local funds to the project.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. I think Tracy is going to speak to this a little bit.
Okay. Hello, I'm Tracy with the Neighborhood Services Division. We have 4 applications before you for Workforce Housing Tax Credit. It is a project from the Iowa Economic Development Authority. It is a state program. The state program requires a local match of $1,000 per unit. That's why you're seeing these applications. The applicant they cannot apply until they get that resolution of support from the local government entity. In the administrative code for the workforce housing tax credits, the purpose of the program is to assist the development of housing projects that are targeted at middle-income households and that focus on the redevelopment or repurposing of existing structures. So basically, developers are eligible for this project if the cost of construction and land are less than $200,000 per unit. There's no rental restriction, there's no sales price restriction, there's no income targeting. It's basically meant to increase the supply of affordable, modest units across the state. Developers are eligible for an investment tax credit up to 10% of the investment, and for sales taxes. They're exempt from sales taxes paid during the construction. So we have the four projects. We have, the first one is Cardinal Point West. We started getting these applications back in 2015. We have approved 6 of them to date for, let's see. I had it? Aha. We've approved 448 units so far for $408,000. So those are the 6 projects that we have approved so far. Cardinal Point West LLC is a project by Southgate over on Camp Cardinal Boulevard at Deer Creek Road. 90 units is the first phase, and they're garden-style apartments. The developer is willing to, he plans on providing 5% affordable at the home fair market rent. We talked a little bit earlier. It is compatible with the comprehensive plan, but they do not have their zoning in place at this point. They have site control. The reason why staff presented it is because it was compatible with the comprehensive plan. Are there any other questions? I don't know if you had any more questions about workforce housing tax credits in general, or if you just wanted to discuss the individual projects.
Tracy, I want to ask one question to make sure I'm clear about a particular point. And my question applies to item 11, but also to item 12. It's the same developer, as I understand it. And am I correct in understanding that in order for the project to proceed, a rezoning would be required for both of those?
Yes. I mean, we have had that in the past. I mean, you just approved zoning for a tax credit project that we approved at last month, so.
Which one was that?
The Orchard Place ones, that you just did the Orchard Place rezoning today. So we'd already approved, it's M&W Properties at 619 and 627 Orchard. We approved that last month. And then the
Probably a
zoning
couple
got
months
it
ago,
set, you just did the zoning tonight.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Any other questions for Tracy? Thanks. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, discussion.
I'm going to be supporting this, and I'll just say this once, I'm going to support all 4 of these. I think at this point, you know, we talk about affordable housing, and I realize that this is not technically affordable housing, but a lot of it has to do with the supply and demand. And I think this is a small investment by the city to really help increase some of the supply of housing that certainly is not high-end in terms of the cost of that housing. And so hopefully will parlay into reasonable costs for residents as they look for places to live. So I think it's a great program. I hope the state money continues to be there and that we can continue to increase the supply. So I'll be supporting all 4 of these.
Mr. Mayor, we do need a motion.
Oh, I thought we already.
Can we do one?
I think I moved
Susan
and
moved and Terry.
Terry seconded, I think.
Okay, I must have missed it.
Nope, that's
Must
okay.
be late.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Finally,
we go
somebody
fast
else
and
made a
furious.
mistake.
Yes.
Well, I want to repeat something I said during our work session earlier this evening. When we have 4 similar items before us involving requests for workforce housing tax credits. Together, they would require the city to commit $319,000 to those 4 projects. Now, they're going to bring in substantial support from the state through the state's tax credit, housing tax credit process, but nonetheless, $319,000 from Iowa City. And seeing the 4 proposals together at one time raised questions for me. And as I said during the work session, I think we need to ask ourselves whether we should financially support every workforce housing application that we receive. And it's pretty clear we're receiving right now an uptick. And I don't know if it'll continue. I have no way of knowing, really. But I think we need to have criteria indicating what we require in order to provide support for such applications in the future. Also, especially with regard to items 11 and 12, and this is the reason I asked the question of Tracy, I don't think it's wise to authorize tax credits, housing tax credits, before knowing whether we would approve the required rezoning and site plan. So I think the one you pointed to, Tracy, is certainly similar, but not identical. And in my own mind, I knew how I was going to vote on the Orchard thing, and I knew it was coming up in another 2 weeks or whatever. In this case, I'm not clear about where I stand on the rezoning. And I don't, personally, do not want to find myself in a position where I've already approved housing support for housing tax credits for the items 11 and 12 projects without knowing whether I would support the rezoning. So I can't support items 11 and 12. I personally would prefer to see them deferred, their application deferred until after we decide what to do with regard to rezoning. I don't know what that means procedurally, but I wanted to express my views about that. So I'd like to hear from the rest of you. About the motion that's on the floor, I should say.
I kind of go along with you a little bit, Jim, too, as far as the rezoning, because I'm having trouble picturing, and that's my side of town. There's limited resources as far as in that area. City Transit doesn't go out there. There is the grocery about 1.5 miles away into Coralville, the Coralville Hy-B. But as far as looking at neighborhood kinds of things, I mean, this is a lot of folks in that neighborhood. I know we're looking at the workforce housing credit of it and not the actual unit itself, but we don't know what that zoning's going to look like you're saying. So kind of getting the cart before the horse, I think. So I kind of agree with you on that.
Well, I mean, I'll just speak as I did, I think, at the work session. Because of the long lead time on the state money, I'm supportive of going ahead and approving these now, even though we don't have the zoning done. I think it should be clear to the developers that approving this is not a zoning approval. That still is a possibility that we wouldn't approve the rezoning. They're totally different items, but it does allow them at least to get in line at the state with a process that now it sounds like is about 2 years out in terms of trying to get money from the state on this. So delaying their ability to get in line at the state, I don't think it does anybody any good. So I'm supportive of moving ahead on these now, simply so they can get in line, knowing that all that rezoning still has to be done, and maybe on some of these items wouldn't even occur.
Yeah, I did react a little bit looking through the packet and seeing these 4 applications, and they did look rough to me. You know, I think I'm satisfied with Jeff's explanation that they are consistent with the comprehensive plan, but you know, I think they will need to evolve through the rezoning process. I would certainly hope and expect them to evolve through that process, and it does seem that there is a, you know, in terms of getting in line for these tax credits, there's some advantage to doing that. I don't think it's an ideal process. I would prefer to see a more refined project before approving any tax credits that would go toward it. However, you know, I also wanted to, a question what I would have is how are other cities proceeding with this? And I think it was noted in the packet. I mean, we are in that sense competing with other municipalities in terms of getting these credits. So I'm kind of inclined to say yes, let's move forward, knowing full well that they may not, you know, be rezoned in the future.
And in which case it hasn't cost us anything.
Right.
I guess one question I have, Eleanor, we can't negotiate to get anything back, right? I mean, so for example, we have to do X number of dollars as a condition to receiving the tax credits. You know, with TIF, sometimes we can negotiate where the city gets things in return. The statute doesn't allow us to do that, does it? I mean, in other words,
we're not actually paying the money at this point.
Well, I know, but the point is that it just seems like we're giving the developer money as a condition precedent to getting the tax credits. Am I understanding that correctly?
No.
They can't submit an application until they have this resolution of support from the city.
Yes.
And what the city has to do is say that they'll contribute $1,000 per unit.
That's my point.
But they're not, we would not be handing the developer a check.
This time.
At this time.
At this time. No, I understand that. But I'm saying in terms of what the city gets back, we get workforce housing units. But even to use the term workforce, is sort of a misnomer because it's not really workforce because there's no income limitation. And as I understand this rule, we could have a multimillionaire who just wants a small house and they could purchase these units, couldn't they?
Yeah, there's no restrictions on rental costs.
So I think to Jim's point, I would like to see, to the extent the statute permits us, I would like to see us get some standards that we can develop here because we are, and I think to the argument about increasing the supply, I guess I would like to see if we've done any analysis to say, okay, what is the impact on housing prices? I mean, I haven't seen that data. That said, I think to Susan's point, getting in line does make sense. I would like to, at some point in the future, see some criteria that we come in, that we develop, because it just seems like right now, we're just sort of everyone that comes up, we're granting them, and I don't think that's really enough, because these are substantial investments the city is making at some point in the future, and I think we need to be very careful about that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Cole?
This is for item 11 only, incidentally.
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
No.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
No, motion carries, was that 4-2? All right, item 12, workforce housing tax credits, Iowa City Grove. Resolution in support of the Iowa City Grove LLC application for Workforce Housing Tax Incentives Program from the Iowa Economic Development Authority to construct residential housing at Deer Creek Road and Camp Cardinal Boulevard and committing local funds to the project.
Move to resolution.
Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Mims. Discussion. This is identical to the previous thing, just the number of units involved differs. So I don't know that we have any need to discuss. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
No, motion carries 4-2. Item
5-1.
5-1.
Oh, you said,
She said
I'm
yes.
sorry, I apologize. 5-1. Item 13, Workforce Housing Tax Credits, TSB Investments. Resolution in support of the TSB Investments LLP application for Workforce Housing Tax Incentives Program from the Iowa Economic Development Authority to construct residential housing at Camp Cardinal Road and Gathering Place Lane and committing local funds to the project.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. I'd like to ask Tracy a question. Do I understand correctly that this area is already rezoned properly for this type of project?
Yes. It is
Thank you.
currently zoned low-density, multifamily residential, and it complies with the zoning.
Great, thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
Yes,
Cole?
Yes.
motion carries 6-0. Item 14, Workforce Housing Tax Credits, Dubuque and Prentice Investments. Resolution in support of the application of Dubuque and Prentice Investments, LC, for Workforce Housing Tax Incentives Program from the Iowa Economic Development Authority to construct residential housing, 620 South Dubuque Street, and committing local funds to the project.
Move resolution.
Second.
Moved by Thomas, seconded by Dickens. Again, I'd like to ask Tracy a question. It's already zoned RFC, whatever, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Discussion? Seeing none, roll call, or hearing none, roll call?
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throckmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 15, Climate Action and Adaptation Plan Consulting Services. Resolution authorizing and directing the city manager to execute and the city clerk to attest an agreement by and between the City of Iowa City and Elevate Energy to provide consultant services for the development of the city's climate action and adaptation plan.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims, seconded by Thomas. Discussion?
Rockne and I were part of it. I talked to
Yeah,
Ellen.
yeah, I
We
wonder if
were
you and
part
Rockne
of
could
the-
both talk about that a bit.
Yeah, process of finding a consultant, and I think everybody pleased with Elevate Energy and what they can help us with.
No, and I think the community is going to be very excited to work with this particular organization. I think the key thing that struck me is that their experience, and they worked on the Iowa Energy Plan, they've worked with the state of Missouri Energy Plan. So I think what is most exciting to me in terms of making this plan actually work is that they have a lot of experience in Iowa, and they've worked with local leaders. And it really struck me that they've really gone above and beyond the call of duty in a lot of different contexts. So, for example, with the state of Iowa, they held meetings throughout the state. I think there was a request to do more, and they went ahead and did that. I think in terms of the cost, this was a good, solid, value-driven proposal. And we were very pleased, I think, that the consensus was the presentation that they made to our group, our selection committee, was very impressive. They had a team of 4 with a variety of experiences, and I'm really quite confident they'll be able to talk and engage with all sectors of our community. So we're really excited. And I think there's also going to be some really good economic development opportunities here. And so I'm really excited to see what we have in store.
Well, I'm very excited as well, and I'm very pleased to see that the staff was able to work through the details with the consultant and create a committee that would help review the proposals and all that. I'm very pleased about all that. I do have a request. I don't remember seeing a timetable with regard to the consultant's work. I did see a list of tasks, but not a timetable. It'd be good to have a sense of what that is. You don't have to say right now, but.
Well, I actually have it. And
okay.
I can speak to that a little bit. They did provide a timeline for the project, the expected timeline for the project, which is anticipated to take about 12 months, so from project start to finish, and I wrote a couple notes about that. So the preliminary plan, or is proposed in the proposal and as part of the agreement, they'll be holding the first steering committee approximately 1 to 2 months into the process. So the first step will be to meet with staff and just to kind of gather expectations and decide how we are going to be working with them to go about the process. They'll be performing interviews and technical reviews concurrently with that meeting and preparing for a public meeting, which should occur about 3 to 4 months into the process. So in addition to the widespread community public meeting, they'll also be conducting public surveys and various other public engagement tools. They'll be drafting strategies and a technical review, it looks like, approximately halfway through that process. So they're going to do quite a bit of gathering information from our community stakeholders, the steering committee, and staff. They are looking to share findings in what looks like fall of this year, and then drafting the final components of the plan over winter, presenting the final plan in the springtime. So we can provide you the timeline if you like, but it's included in the agreement.
That's
It's
helpful.
Section
Thank you.
7, I believe. Section 5. So is there any other area that you have questions about as far as the process, or we spend a significant amount of time on staff reviewing reference calls, and overall, they have a really deep bench between the 3 consultant groups combined as Elevate Energy that made us really confident in this choice.
Any questions for Ashley? I want to say one thing before we actually vote. Back in 1984, I met Scott Bernstein, who then was the director of the Center and creator of the Center for Neighborhood Technology, which is one of the consulting firms involved in this. I don't know if Scott is still the executive director or whatever, but there's something very pleasing to me personally, sort of coming full circle, having worked with Scott way back then, and now getting some help from CNT on this project. Yeah. Okay, any further discussion?
Just want to say thanks to everyone involved. A lot of effort went into getting to this point. It's really exciting.
Okay, roll call.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Nims?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Item 16, Iowa City Community School District Bond Referendum Support. Resolution of support for the Iowa City Community School District's 2017 General Obligation Bond Referendum.
Move the resolution.
Second.
Moved by Mims and seconded by Dickens.
We have two school board members here in the audience. I'd like to ask if either one or both of you, Brian or Paul, would like to speak to this.
Put them on the spot.
I'm giving you your chance to give the public spiel here better than any of us can, Brian.
Should I sign in?
Yes, please.
Just because I can't write and speak at the same time, I'm just going to do this real quick. And I was blessed with an exceptionally long German last name, so it took me just a moment. So thank you for consideration of this support for the bond referendum. We, as a school district, are 4 years into a 10-year facility master plan. We have 6 years remaining. The plan was derived with significant community involvement starting in 2012, before I was even on the board, and I'm at the end of my 4th year right now. The projects throughout our school district affect every single building in every one of our municipalities. They bring our historic schools, such as Longfellow, Mann, and Lincoln, up to 21st century standards, including air conditioning. On a day like today, some of those buildings were incredibly hot, including ADA accessibility, including energy efficient windows, natural lighting, all the things you would hope for in a school, and yet preserving the historic character in our 100-year-old buildings such as Mann and Longfellow. We're very excited about the work that's about to begin. At the same time, we also have development in other regions of our district on the perimeter. We've committed to building where space is necessary. And 4 years into the facility master plan, we have 12 projects worth $155 million completed, all on time and on budget, without touching property taxes, without any general obligation bond money used. All that money has come from the 1-cent sales tax known as SAVE funds, which is paid for statewide, and all school districts benefit from that. The general obligation bond allows us to continue the remaining 6 years of the 10-year facility master plan. The effect, one of the reasons that that I've enjoyed serving on the school board is that I've always said, and no offense to folks up here, but when people move to a community, they don't necessarily ask, how are the sewers? What's the zoning look like? How many stoplights are there? They ask, first and foremost, how are the schools? And whether you live in an exploding growth area on the perimeter of town or whether you live in a historic portion of our school district, it's important that all of our schools are good and all of our schools are equitable learning environments for our students and teaching environments, work environments for our teachers. We don't have that right now, but we're 4 years into that. In the first 4 years, since you're interested in how it affects Iowa City, in the first 4 years we have renovated Twain to add air conditioning, a real-size gymnasium, art and music classrooms. We're finishing up the renovations at Lucas Elementary School, which again involves air conditioning, additional classroom space, et cetera, bringing everything up to 21st century. We're about to start the historic, very exciting renovation for Longfellow Elementary, which, as was mentioned before, was built 100 years ago, and we're committing to the next 100 years of serving the Summit Street and surrounding neighborhoods. Let's see, we're finishing up at Weber over on the west side of Iowa City. We're beginning work at West High right now. Am I missing anything in Iowa City, Paul? Oh, of course, we opened, oh my goodness, we opened Alexander Elementary
Must be
and are
late.
about to open New Hoover Elementary, east of Scott Boulevard, on Barrington Road. Those are the first two elementary schools built on east of the river since Helen Lemmy opened in 1970. That's the school I went to. So it's very exciting to have those types of projects completed. How the bond referendum affects Iowa City in particular, just off the top of my head, we'll see if I can do this. Mann Elementary School, total historic renovation. Similar ideas as Longfellow, ADA accessibility, air conditioning, energy efficiency. And I know it's been fun to have those conversations between the school district and the city council and take everybody's ideas, and now public input has been gathered as well, so we're very excited about that. Lincoln Elementary, very similar, about a 90-year-old building roughly. Lots to do there, lots to bring it up to 21st century standards. Southeast Junior High. Southeast Junior High serves all the students of East Iowa City. There's about $15 million worth of projects necessary at Southeast Junior High, including air conditioning. It's one of our least air-conditioned buildings. City High. There's about $30 million worth of renovations necessary at City High. There's a significant number of renovations at West High. I can't remember the dollar amount off the top of my head. We have plans for Horn Elementary. We have plans for Wood Elementary. We have plans for Shimmick Elementary. We have plans for Lemmy Elementary School. These are all Iowa City schools. And some of those neighborhoods are 100-year-old neighborhoods. Some of those neighborhoods are 40-year-old neighborhoods like Lemmy. Some of those neighborhoods are less than 5-year-old neighborhoods. We have exciting renovations coming to Alexander Elementary, for instance. Even though it's a brand new elementary school, we have introduced weighted resource allocation to make sure that some of our students throughout the district who have the largest opportunity gaps get smaller class sizes. Alexander Elementary is a perfect example of a school that we just built, but we changed a policy that's having an immediate impact on our students, our most vulnerable students, making sure that we have adequate space, because you may have the same number of students in a building, but smaller class sizes means you need more classrooms. So we're very excited about the projects that are coming. The total 10-year facility master plan is a $347 million list of projects. We've completed $155 million worth of projects in the last 4 years, all of which have been completed on time, on budget. There's $191.5 million worth of projects remaining, and we're very excited to see you as a council considering support for the bond referendum. I'll be happy to take any questions. I'll do my best to answer them.
Brian, I think one of the most important there's a lot of important things in this. One is the equitable learning environment for all of our students and bringing our schools up to the 21st century. A lot of people will focus on the money, and some of them will want to focus on that in a very negative way. Can you tell us how that is going to impact, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, I should have let you know I was going to do this.
No.
How it's going to impact people's property tax, and also where the Iowa City Community School District ranks in the state
You bet.
in terms of their tax levy?
You bet. The neat thing about a bond referendum is that it commits the school district to, the money is used, it's a very specific check. The bond referendum ties the school district to only being able to use the money for projects listed specifically in the bond referendum, which is why when voters go to the ballot box on September 12th, they will look at a giant run-on paragraph that lists all the projects, specifically every one of those projects I just mentioned. So how it affects property tax. So our current bond debt, which has been around, I believe, since we built Tate and what else?
Close enough.
Yeah, Tate and North Central Junior High, and I think Borlaug, is that right? Yeah. So our bond debt expires at the end of this year. So essentially, when it comes to bonding again, that commits us to future building projects. We are the 5th largest school district in the state of Iowa. We have just shy of 14,000 students, just by a few students. We're just under 14,000. We're the 3rd fastest growing in the state. We're soon to be 4th largest in the state. So we're fifth largest now, soon to be fourth largest. Our property tax impact from the school district is right now $13.98 per thousand of assessed value. Of the top 10 largest school districts in the state, we are currently 10th out of 10, despite the fact that we're nearly fourth in size in regarding the number of kids that are educated. With bond passage, we would still remain 10th out of 10. We don't even touch Dubuque, which is in ninth place. Part of that is because growth is good. Growth is very good. As we grow, and historically the school district, which encompasses multiple municipalities, historically over the last 10 years has averaged about 4.5% growth per year. As the pie gets bigger, the property tax impact on the individual taxpayers, the slice of the pie actually gets smaller. So the actual property tax impact of bond passage in the most conservative model that we have, which would be 0% growth, which is unfathomable in this community, would be 98 cents per thousand of assessed value. And again, we're in 10th place. That would keep us in 10th place. We would not touch Dubuque, which is in 9th place. Realistically, because we are going to continue to grow, it's likely to be less than that, more like 93 cents at the maximum. How that affects a property owner, we actually have all this information on the school district website. It is all publicly available. But we have it broken down by property value. So on a $100,000 property, the tax impact is $4.25 per month on your property taxes. The average home value across the school district is $198,000, which is roughly $200,000. So for just to use round numbers, you'd be looking at an $8.50 per month impact on the average homeowner in the Iowa City School District. Does that answer the question that you're looking for, Councilor Mims?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And actually, if you happen to know this one off the top of your head, how far below are we in 10th spot than 9th? You said we're at 13 something?
Yeah, we're
per
99 cents. I think, 99 cents below them. So in a 0% growth model, we would increase 98 cents, which would still keep us just barely below them. But in a district like, say, Ankeny, they're at $19.36 per thousand. They're one of the highest tax rates. Of course, they're a young community, and they're growing extremely fast. We have an interesting situation here in that we have incredible growth in some parts of the school district, but we also have our historic schools that it's absolutely necessary to maintain and keep them serving our historic neighborhoods. Happy to answer any other questions.
I want to ask one brief question.
Yeah.
Am I correct in understanding that Tate High School additions, or an addition to Tate High
Yes.
and upgrades to Tate High will be included?
Yes, in January. So Tate initially, when it was built, was meant to serve students. We called it Tate the School of Choice. Students who choose to go to Tate to get their education. When the school opened, it was viewed as a temporary place to be, but we use Tate very differently now. There are students that choose to graduate from Tate. In fact, it's one of my favorite graduations every year. We hold it at the Engler, and I hope maybe some people will think about coming to that. But at Tate High School, we're adding a gymnasium. The kids who choose to go to Tate don't have a gymnasium. And I don't think that there's any research that shows that physical activity and physical commitment to physical education is a bad thing in a school environment. I certainly haven't seen any.
Yeah. I didn't mean to imply there were, so.
No. I think it's very exciting because if Tate is going to be a school where students not only choose to go there, but choose to graduate there, they have to receive their physical education somehow, and we need that commitment.
Great. Thank you, Brian.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Brian?
Rockne, Terry, Pauline, John.
Brian, thank you very much. I know I put you on the
Thank you very
spot,
much.
but you presented it all much better than I could have, so thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Paul, for toughing it out. You've only been here for 2.5 hours. It comes with the territory, right?
Nothing compared to school.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, is that right? I want to read the key paragraph in the proposed resolution so that, the listening public can know this. And that paragraph reads, "Now therefore be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Iowa City that the City Council supports ICCSD's Facilities Master Plan process and encourages voters to approve the 2017 ballot proposition authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds to fund projects in the Facilities Master Plan," unquote. And I would say also, I am aware that this evening we received a couple communications from residents giving strong reasons why we should not support this. I appreciate the fact they've shared their views with us, but I intend to support this.
I do as well. I think there is nothing more important than the schools in our community. I spent 3 years on the school board, and thank you to Brian and Paul and all the rest. I'll tell you, it's easier to sit up here than it was in the school board chairs. People get very passionate when it comes to their children, and sometimes with that passion, they lose a little bit of objectivity. So I know what you put up with, and the past few years have been, I think, incredibly difficult, but you have accomplished an incredible amount with getting the community together to develop the facility master plan, to get 4 years into that facility master plan and make such huge improvements and investments in so many of our schools. And I have to give the community who was involved in that so much credit, because not only were they caring, about the schools, but they also kind of figured out politically how this needs to work, especially when you cross many municipal boundaries. And that is, you have to develop a plan that over those 10 years gives something to everybody in every geographical area over time, at the same time, but also at every educational level. So to try and pull all that together, where as you go through, North Liberty's getting something, Iowa City's getting something, Coralville's getting something, all kind of at the same time, but you're also doing things at the same time at the elementary and the junior high and the high school, is an incredibly complex plan to put together. And I think the literally hundreds of people who worked on that over thousands or tens of thousands of hours to pull all that together did an incredible job. And we're 40% of the way through it. We owe it not only to the children that are in our district, but to this community. And when I say community, I mean the whole Iowa City Community School District as a whole, and the children of the future, to make sure that we have the best possible learning environments for them. And so I'm very pleased to support this, and I hope everybody listening will not only support it, but get out and work for the passage of the bond. It's incredibly important. It's also incredibly important for economic development in this area. People look at our schools when they decide whether to move here or expand a business here or take a job here. So this is really important. I hope everybody will support it.
I think it's very important that everybody gets out and votes. We've seen over the last many years, voters don't come out. This is too big of project for the whole city and the whole area to ignore. So I plan on every council time reminding people to get registered, get out and vote. I think this is an extremely important, this is not for me, this is for kids, grandkids, the next generations past them. The fact that this is so equitable to all the schools all over Iowa City, North Liberty, Coralville, Hills, I think that's probably the most impressive thing, is that all these schools are getting something, and it's, I don't know how you guys did it really, but I think it's a great job that you've gotten where you have, and I just can't see us putting a stop to this. We gotta move forward and get this vote done.
Yeah, I also think it's just a very well thought out plan and touches on every part of the community, and folks that say that they don't understand why the council is getting behind this or doing this resolution. Schools are the part of the community, as you've said. Folks ask about the schools in the area before they move here. It is the heart of the community, and so I think that it's important for us to show the support for the school district.
It's, I know when I first moved here, I was, and looked at the school district and its, the way it allocated its resources toward the facility management. It I was puzzled by it because it seemed to be one school at a time. And I remember writing an editorial to the Press Citizen on, we'll all be better off when we're all better off. And, this is a comprehensive plan, a very large comprehensive plan. And so it truly is working toward achieving equity with the schools, and that's something that has been a challenge over the years. I think any plan this size is going to have those who have issues with it of one sort or another. I certainly hope over the next, 4 months, there will be robust conversations among the community to try to resolve whatever misunderstandings or concerns that are out there. But again, I will be supporting the plan, and I think it's a remarkable effort to try to achieve equity within the system.
I'm going to be supporting this as well. I think what this plan does particularly well is balance the urban, suburban, and rural components of the community. I don't know where we rank in terms of that mix, but it's really, I think, probably one of the more unusual districts in the state of Iowa that has those variables to try to manage. I mean, you mentioned, for example, Ankeny. Well, that strikes me as, more suburban. And I think that does this particularly well. And I do want to address one thing. Susan had talked about the input. Early on, one of the initial proposals a long time ago, 4 or 5 years ago, did involve recommending closure of a lot of schools that I don't think people wanted to close, right? Because of that input, because of that feedback from the community, the school district listened. And at least what I've observed so far is that they've followed the plan previously so far. And as far as I can tell, there has not been a departure from the facility master's plan in the last 4 years, unless I'm mistaken, and viewers listening, if there is a departure, let me know. But I don't think there is. And so in addition to what we've heard tonight, I think the residents can have confidence that they will carry through. And as I understand what you said is that not only it is essentially required by the bond to essentially carry through, essentially what my understanding is. And if I thought for a second that our cherished schools like Lincoln or Horace Mann were at risk, I wouldn't support it. But I have no reason to believe that. I have every confidence we'll move forward with that. And I think that this particular plan, I think, will do precisely what we want it to do, which is to strengthen our inner core neighborhood schools. And everything about it tells me that. Now, it's a lot of money. I don't think any of us want to spend that much money, but I think it's for a good reason. As Terry mentioned, it's for investment in the future of the children of this community. And I think one final thing related to population, we've talked about our growing communities like North Liberty and Coralville, but it's easy to forget the city of Iowa City has added the entire population of the city of North Liberty in this, in the last 20 years. So we ourselves have really experienced enormous growth, and I think this really addresses those long-term needs. So I am going to be supportive of it. But I want everyone to have a thoughtful and constructive debate, and I want to encourage other people that are dissenters that we can stay positive with one another, share our views, and welcome all viewpoints.
All right. So, Paul, Brian, as they say in French, bonne chance, bon courage. Good luck, have courage, basically. So, yeah. All right. Roll call, please.
Thomas?
Yes.
Throgmorton?
Yes.
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Could I have a motion to accept correspondence, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Mims. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 17, racial profiling, non-discrimination resolution. Resolution reaffirming the City of Iowa City law enforcement non-discrimination policy.
Move to resolution.
Second.
Moved by Dickens, seconded by Thomas. Discussion. Eleanor, would you be in a position to very briefly describe this, or Jeff? I don't know. I don't want
I
to.
think probably Jeff.
Jeff.
Jeff drafted it.
Please.
This was requested by the council a couple work sessions ago when Chief Matherly was presenting to you. What we did is we went back to the 2001 resolution that that city council adopted, and it was entitled the City of Iowa City Law Enforcement Non-Discrimination Policy, and we felt that that still provided a really strong foundation. So we've attached that 2001 resolution to your packet, and then we drafted a second resolution that has a little bit different language in it, but essentially reaffirms the City Council's commitment to practices that are not discriminatory within our police department, and kind of a statement of no tolerance when it comes to racial profiling practices.
Thank you. I want to mention I had a conversation with Kingsley earlier today, and though he cannot vote, he did express his strong support for this and appreciation for the fact that the staff put this resolution together. Any discussion?
I think it's just very interesting, you know, when we think about all the discussion we've had in the last 3, 4, 5 years around, you know, policing, you know, in the country and in Iowa City and these various issues, that the Iowa City Council back in 2001 had basically passed the exact same resolution. I mean, yeah, you've tweaked some words, but when you think about the real intent and the real content, all we're doing really is reaffirming, and I don't mean that critically, but we're just reaffirming something that this council had already done basically 16 years ago. And so, you know, we aren't behind the times. We were maybe ahead of the times. Not that we don't all need to improve and reassess where we're at, but this really is a reaffirmation of something that was done 16 years ago. So.
Yeah, I would agree, Susan. This resolution is consistent with the best of Iowa City. Roll call, please.
Throgmorton?
Yes?
Cole?
Yes.
Dickens?
Yes.
Mims?
Yes.
Taylor?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Excuse me. Item 18, council appointments. Applicants must reside in Iowa City and be 18 years of age unless specific qualifications are stated. So, help me remember this, folks. When we finish going through these appointments, I need a motion and a voice vote to make the appointments. So, we have a total of 35 applicants for 12 positions on 5 boards or commissions. Not an easy task, it seems to me. I would like to make a request of the staff. I think, from my point of view at least, it would be helpful to have a list of current board members provided to us kind of right at the outset with regard to appointments to commissions or boards. I often find myself kind of asking, well, you know, what kind of balance do I think the board needs at this moment in time? I can't answer that question without doing a lot of legwork. So please provide that. All right, first on our list, if I'm looking at this correctly, is the Community Police Relations Board. We have 7 applicants for 2 4-year terms, one of which is a female requirement. And Julie, Eleanor, if I make mistakes in stating any of this, please let me know. I won't run through the names. Let's do the female requirement first.
I would do Mazahir. She's already on it. Oftentimes, we don't always, but lots of times we give people an opportunity for a second term. And so that was my selection.
I'd agree.
Mine also.
Yeah, that's what I was going to suggest as well. All right, so we will appoint Mazahir Saleh. All right, and we have, what's the number here? 1, 2, 3, 3 applicants for the, well, I guess
all
we
of
can
them are
appoint
available.
anybody to it, so.
I picked David Selmer. I thought he had an interesting background in terms of as an attorney, both defending police but also a criminal defense attorney. So he's kind of worked on both sides of it. Really seems to understand, I think, a lot about those issues. I think would be good in terms of looking if we kind of change or expand some of the things in terms of the CPRB looking at policy and stuff. And also it came into play as I was looking at these applicants for other commissions and trying to balance who was going to go where. So I thought he would do a really good job on there.
I have some concern about David Selmer, and I guess I need to be clear about this. If I understand correctly, he worked for many years, I don't know, more than 10 years in Chicago, defending police officers charged with various kinds of misconduct or inappropriate conduct. And he has tremendous experience. That is very, very obvious. So I think it's crucial that this board consists of members who are very even-handed. And my concern is that with that kind of background, given the sensitivity of police-community relations, he might be inclined to give undue support to police officers who are being, about whom questions have been asked by the public. And I think the rules of the commission already are pretty strong in making it difficult for allegations of inappropriate behavior, or whatever the right language is. It makes it pretty hard for that to be sustained. So we very rarely see a particular proposal or claim sustained. And moreover, because Mr. Selmer has this enormous amount of experience, I worry that he would be tremendously persuasive, way out of scale with the other members of the commission. So I just need to express that concern, and I'd be very curious to know what the rest of you think.
I think that really questions the person's ethics.
No. It's about his experience.
Well, I think what you're saying is you don't trust that he could be even-handed because of his experience.
I think it's more, that there could be a potential bias there. I don't know that it's that. I nothing against lawyers, Rockne, but I saw that, and that always sends up red flags for me. I think that kind of is an imbalance on that board to have somebody with the legal background. And personally, I was leaning towards Charles Eastman, just because of his experience in the community and the things that he's done and helped folks out in the community.
See, but I would say Charlie brings his own bias to this as well.
Wasn't Charlie seeking to be on another commission too?
Yes.
Yeah.
HCDC, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Housing,
That's where
So
I was
that's what I'm
gonna
going
put
to support him for, not this.
him.
The
Up
only
for your
thing,
attorneys, Rockne.
well, the only thing I would say is that there can be, about 10 years ago, I'll talk about my own experience. It was an excessive force case that I was involved in, and that particular officer was reported by other law enforcement officers. So sometimes they can actually have higher expectations. I'm not saying always, and I think that your concerns are absolutely valid. I think what we don't want is a decision maker that is going to bring undue influence and have so much of base their decision on experience that I think it will cause the public to lose confidence. I think it's a hard call. I think it sort of cuts both ways. I wish I could be more clear as far as that goes, but there's nothing to really jump out in the resume itself, though, Jim, to cause you concerns about his experience. I mean, in terms of specific acts, it's more just the general experience.
No.
And I think that's important to note. And I'm not saying you're stating that.
Well, and I would just also, I think you said he was doing it for 10 years. The way I read this, it says for 4 years he defended Chicago police and civil rights complaints. I mean, he still did it. I'm not saying he didn't defend them, but it was for 4, the way I read this was for 4 years.
Jim, did you have another selection that you would wanted to make in lieu of that recommendation?
Well, I think Susan makes a very good point with regard to Charlie, who frankly is a very good friend in many ways, but I think he does have a strong perspective, and that could be of concern as well. So I'd have to say no. I feel ambivalent in a way similar to you, Rockne. if we're not appointing Mazahir, and I strongly support her, I think we should. If we were not appointing her, I would recommend Ali Ahmed. But we are appointing Mazahir, so.
I think David Selmer would be.
Yep, I don't have any problem with David.
Rockne, I understand you to be saying you don't really have any problem with David, and in mine, I'm expressing a concern. If I had a chance to meet him and talk with him,
Yeah.
you know, I could just ask him questions, and then maybe my concerns would evaporate. So, but that's not the situation.
I mean, if I'm reading this right, he also talks about, I later worked for a few years in private practice where I prosecuted claims of civil rights abuse and police misconduct. So I read this, that he's worked on both sides.
That's very typical, too.
You know,
Yeah.
he's defended the police, but he's also been against the police, depending on the position he's been in. So I didn't read it, I didn't read it as that he would necessarily particularly come in with a bias of having spent like 10 or 20 years just working in defense of police. He's worked both defending them, but he's also worked in cases against them.
Okay, I'll support Selmer.
Okay, that's fine.
I don't object to, I mean, my preference was with Charlie. I thought Charlie, as we're moving into this focus on disproportionate minority contact would be really useful on that commission, but, you know, I think there's sufficient support for David now.
Okay, so we have 2 appointees there. All right, moving to Historic Preservation Commission, we have a total of 7 applicants for 4 vacancies. 3 are male requirement, and 1 is no gender requirement. But the vacancies are divided among Longfellow, Northside, and 2 at-large categories.
If my analytical skills worked, honest,
This is tricky.
I came up with Thomas Agron for the north side. Now, this is unusual. He's done a full term and a partial, so that, but,
I'm not sure he's done a partial, but
Yeah, that was confusing, actually.
yeah.
okay.
I think he's only done 1 full term.
But we don't have enough men. I mean, was basically where it ended up anyways.
Can't have too many men.
So, matter of
kidding.
opinion.
What are we in 1955?
So I had Thomas Agron for the North Side representative. I had Kevin Boyd, who's in an unexpired term now as an at-large.
Right.
G.T. Carr as an at-large.
Right.
And then I had, I don't know how to say it, Gosia Clore as the Longfellow.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce her first name either.
Yep.
So that got us our 3 male, and it covered the geographical.
I think those are great picks. I'm a huge fan of Thomas.
There
and
weren't
Kevin.
any other men left. so.
I'm a big fan of those
Yeah,
guys.
I just had some concerns about GT Carr, just from some correspondence I'd gotten as far as that he has done some battles with the Historic Preservation regarding his siding business and siting.
But he's won awards from them as well, so.
Pardon me?
He's won an award
He's
from
won
them.
awards.
I don't know if you read that part, but he has won awards with them, and he is in a contracting business, so he understands the contracting side of things. So I think it's good to have that kind of balance, that he can understand what they're talking about.
I understand there's some concern, that just so we can all be clear
Sure.
about it, the concern about, I don't know GT Carr, you know, so there's some concern about,
I've known him for 38 years, so.
well, there you go, about how he's, might have a conflict of interest because of the nature of his business, which is to make certain kinds of changes in existing homes that are really inconsistent with the Historic Preservation Handbook. And I think he's had some battles with the commission over those points. And, you know, so the concern is that he might have a conflict of interest.
Well, we've got a counselor that has a conflict of interest when it comes to school stuff. I mean, so they have to recuse if they have a conflict of interest. I think, I guess I look at it this way. It gives somebody who's in that business the opportunity on that commission to engage in, you know, dialogue with those people in terms of, you know, are there things that should be changed? You know, do all the rules that are in place make sense? he's only going to be one person out of that entire commission. He's not going to change him on his own, but it might lead to some good dialogue as well. And if there's particular cases in which he needs to recuse himself, then...
I agree with you, Susan. I think in small groups, it's good to identify dissenting voices, and so to the extent he has that, I think that could create a more effective, reliable decision-making process, would be my thought.
Has everyone spoken? I'm not sure. I mean, I clearly hear.
Yeah, I mean, I was concerned about the potential conflict of interest with GT. However, you know, I think Susan's point, which is one that I had identified it as well, which is he's one voice on the commission. So, you know, that I think that will addresses for me satisfactorily this concern about his conflicts.
Okay, I hear that. So I want to ask one question just for confirmation, really. If I understand correctly, GT Carr will be serving on the Climate Action Steering Committee. That does not pose a conflict, does it? Because of the way we wrote that resolution?
I think so. You said that serving on another commission would not disqualify them from the climate action, as I recall.
Yeah. That's the way I'm
That was a
remembering.
temporary one.
You could serve
Yeah.
Okay, and then I want to ask a question about, alas, we don't know how to pronounce her first name, but
Gosha.
Gosha Claire Core. I've heard some pretty darn good things about her and the role she's played on the commission. But her application is mighty thin. I wonder if we could solicit information from her. I mean, when I was looking at it today, I was trying to ask myself, who is she really? You know, because I don't know her personally, and the application is very, very thin. You know, she doesn't. Well, I mean, just look at the application. You'll see what I mean. I'm not rejecting her. I'm just expressing a concern and a wish that we had more information about her as a person we're appointing.
I feel like that on a lot of them sometimes.
Well, I'd like to
You know.
really have personal contact with all of our appointees, but.
We asked them to call us, but you can lead the horse. A lot, but if you can't get a hold of them, they can't get a hold of you.
Well, true
They don't
enough.
try to call.
All right.
You can only do so much.
Comfortable supporting her.
Well, I'll just put it this way. I would like to see additional information from Gosha Core. So our appointees, if I understand correctly, are Gosha Core to Longfellow, Thomas Agron to Northside, Kevin Boyd and GT Carr to the two at-large positions.
Yep.
All right. Next is the Housing and Community Development Commission. We have 11 applicants for three-year terms. 2 of them are male requirement, and 1 is no gender requirement. Before we go on, I hate to see Peter Byler depart, as I think he's done a superb job as chair. And so anyhow, but he did not apply. So
Well, I had John McKinstry. I think he was just finishing up an unexpired term, if I recall that correctly. So I had him as 1. We only had 2 other males, so that puts it between Charlie and Nicholas. And
What was Nicholas's last name again?
Magos.
Magos. He's a PhD philosophy student who's done a lot interest in subsistence rights, which I thought was
yeah,
pretty interesting.
It's another
And-
instance where I'd love to actually meet the person.
And there's, I don't know, I think there's this compelling argument of getting new people involved. And I mean, Charlie's been on P&Z. He's very involved in a lot of different organizations in the community between Center for Worker Justice, Coalition for Racial Justice, I can't remember all the Black Voices, et cetera. And so there's a part of me that says, you know, he's doing a lot of his advocacy and work in those areas, and what about giving somebody else an opportunity on a city board or commission? And so while I hear your point and agree with you, Jim, there's not a whole lot of information there and not an opportunity to meet, I'd be kind of interested in giving Nicholas an opportunity.
Well, I'm going to favor Charlie Eastham, but also Vanessa Fixmer Oriz. I know I'm mispronouncing her last name.
I liked Vanessa, you talk about the resume and the application. Hers was pretty thorough in what she had to say, and it sounds like she's attended meetings and she had a good idea of what the commission was all about, as opposed to some of the others that really didn't have a clue or didn't say anything. So I liked her.
I like Vanessa as well.
I'll support Vanessa.
Yep.
All right,
that's
so
fine.
we have McKinstry and Fixmer Oriz as appointees. So what are we going to do with regard to the third position?
I'm going to support Charlie Eastham.
I'm supporting Charlie.
I supported Charlie for the police board since that didn't pan out. I would support Charlie here. I mean, he's a very, very savvy, detailed-oriented person. I think he just serves very well in these capacities. And unfortunately, I don't know Nick, so.
Okay, I think we have 4 votes for Charlie Eastham, so that's 3 appointees, correct?
Yep.
Which brings us to the Library Board of Trustees. We have 9 applicants for 2 6-year terms, no gender balance requirement. But one of the applicants, Richard Beebe, withdrew today, so we can't consider him.
I would highly recommend Carol Kirsch. I've known Carol for a long time. She's lived in Iowa City for a long time. I know her because our girls went to school together. Very good, very detail-oriented. And it's not because she's got the library experience. It's more because she's a library user, a big library user. And I think she'd be very, very good.
Carol Kirsch was one of mine also, and
Yep.
the librarian did stand out for me. I thought
Yep.
that would be excellent.
She was one of my 3,
'cause,
too.
Richard had library experience also, but I also, I know Margaret Donnelly. She was a social worker at the hospital, worked with her for many years. Very wonderful person, and loves to read, reads all the time, spends quite a bit of time at the library, and I would strongly recommend her, Margaret Donnelly.
I was inclined to support Kelly Forkenbrock,
So was I.
a young black woman who works for a local education firm. And I say that partly because, just to be blunt, I mean, it seems lots of friends that I know that serve on the library board tend to be from a wealthier class, tend to be white people and so on. And I don't have anything against white people or wealthier people, but I think we need some balance within that commission
Yeah, Kelly was on mine, too.
or board of trustees. So,
I'd support Kelly.
It's fine with me.
Yes.
all right, so Kelly Forkenbrock and who is it?
Carol Kirsch.
Carol Hirsch?
Kirsch.
Support Carol.
Apologize.
Yep.
Okay, and we have Planning and Zoning Commission. We have 1 applicant for a 5-year term. That is Phoebe Martin.
Support Phoebe?
Sure. She's done a fine job.
Yep.
Yep. So we're good to go with Phoebe Martin, I guess? Yeah. Okay.
So moved.
So you got all those down, right, Julie?
Yes.
Deal. So
Second.
there's a motion from Mims, seconded by Dickens. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I have to read something here, don't I, about vacancies? So let me see. I got to figure out how to do this.
There's some we didn't receive any applications for, so we'll need to re-advertise.
I think it's 19.
Well, I need to read the airport commission kind of thing. So we have 1 vacancy to fill a 4-year term on the airport commission. 2 vacancies to fill unexpired terms upon appointment to the airport zoning commission. 1 vacancy to fill an unexpired term upon appointment to the airport board of adjustment. Let's see. 1 vacancy for a Jefferson Street representative to fill a 3-year term on the Historic Preservation Commission. And 2 vacancies to fill 3-year terms on the Telecommunications Commission. Let's see now, application, when are these due? I guess I don't know when.
Like Under item 19, it says June 13th, but
I don't know. Should I say June 13th?
June 13th.
Okay, so applications must be received for those appointments by Tuesday, June 13th, by 5 p.m. on Tuesday, June 13th. Also, we have one vacancy to fill an unexpired term upon appointment to the Senior Center Commission. And again, that application must be received by 5 p.m. Tuesday, June 13th. So, item 21, City Council information. Terry, why don't we begin with you?
As I stated earlier, get out, register, and vote for the school bond issue. It's not too early to start thinking about voting. Well, I'm sure they'll have early voting, but get registered now so that there's no question when it comes time to vote.
Rockney.
This Saturday at 2:30 p.m. through 7 o'clock, the Iowa Valley Global Food Project is having an event out at the Johnson County Poor Farm. There'll be events for kids. There will be, Mazahir's here. There'll be kids there, and there'll be a lot of different sorts of events, so I encourage everyone to go there. For those of you who don't know, the Iowa Valley Global Food Project are people from all over the world that have made Iowa City home, and they have a shared love of agriculture. And so they're working with the folks at Grow Johnson County to do some wonderful growing projects. And I think this is going to be one of the first kickoff of that. Should be a good time.
Good deal. Pauline?
I wanted to do a shout out and kudos to the letter carriers. This last Saturday, they had their annual food drive, and thanks to all the folks that donated any food products. It was very successful. That'll all go to the crisis center. I know there's a lot of folks that don't realize how many people there really are in this community that struggle to have food for themselves and their families. And then, speaking of food, this Thursday, at the Senior Center, there's what they're calling a SAGE, S-A-G-E, table potluck. It's a national event, and it's at the Senior Center this Thursday at 5 o'clock. It's an event that has folks gather to share a meal with LGBT folks and allies at all different generations, but particularly focusing on the elder folks, and gives everybody a chance to get together and have conversations and build connections. So it'll be a great event.
There was a last Wednesday, the Northside Visioning Workshop was held, and it was a lot of fun. I think there was a real, what I was kind of pleasantly surprised by was the presentation by the traffic consultant who had drones run over the north side to determine the parking patterns. And also looked at, and this is what I found especially interesting, he looked at speeds both when cars are parked only on one side of the street versus two sides of the street, and discovered that the speeds with cars on both sides hover right around 20 miles per hour, which is kind of the holy grail with respect to speeds in neighborhood residential areas. So I'm interested to see where that goes. But it kind of confirmed for me in kind of numeric way what I think all of us have observed, which is that, you know, when parking is allowed on both sides of the streets, it has a calming effect on speed. There you go. Yep.
A couple things. The Crisis Intervention / Access Center Steering Committee is continuing to meet. We meet either every other week or monthly. We finally have representatives from all of the municipalities and the county to meet with the governance committee to discuss how this is going to work in terms of a governance structure. Some ideas that have been kind of floated is a 28E agreements between the organizations in terms of a facility, and then potentially a new nonprofit that would actually provide the services. That has not been finalized yet, but that'll be part of the discussion of that governance committee, as well as some discussion on property itself and some different properties that are currently being looked at. So that's moving forward. Just lots of subcommittees and lots of different work being done that would take an hour to update you, so I won't bore you with it. But another really important one, as part of that steering committee, had the opportunity last week to go to a meeting on the Data-Driven Justice Initiative. And You may recall that, and Jeff, you'll have to help me, last fall, I think it was, maybe.
About that.
We had 3 community members, Officer Dave Schwint, Jessica Peckover from Jail Alternatives, and Chrissy Canganelli from Shelter House, were invited to Washington, D.C. To kind of learn about this. They had made some connections. And so they had a big meeting here last week, and this included representative from the Arnold Foundation. Lynn Overman was actually a member of Obama's White House on the science and technology staff, helping develop data-driven justice initiatives. Our team has been selected as one of the 3 best in the nation in terms of the kind of work that they are doing. I think they are a little bit in awe and overwhelmed at that selection, in that they feel like they are really at the very beginning of what they're doing. But because of that selection, they have been invited to go back to DC. They'll be going in June for basically they'll do a presentation, but then they also will be acting as faculty to these other teams to kind of teach them and talk about what they are already doing here. Some of the people that were there, and this is, I think, what was incredibly exciting for me to listen to. They had people there from Amazon Web Services. They had the lead on all their public health nationwide, actually worldwide, public health initiatives out of Maryland. They had gentleman who was the head of Amazon Web Services for the state of Iowa. They host a lot of Iowa government websites on their platform, on their cloud. And again, Lynn Overman was here from the Arnold Foundation, and an individual who is the developer and CEO of a product called the Loom. And the Loom is basically a platform that can hold all of this data that they need to do this data-driven justice initiative. And one of the reasons our team is so far along is because Dave Schwint spent, I don't know if it was on our dime or on his own time, but spent like 40 to 60 hours pulling data and loading it into this system. Much to his delight and or chagrin, he has discovered that the developers of the Loom can actually do what he did in probably about 5 minutes, what took him about 60 hours. They can mine data given access to these. They have developed this program or this platform, which is pretty incredible in that the sophistication of it and the confidentiality of it, it meets HIPAA requirements, it meets all other acronym requirements that you can possibly think of. So the phase that they're at right now, and what this meeting was about, was talking to providers who are dealing with HIPAA and other types of requirements like that, as well as the jail, as well as our police department is already, of course, putting data in. We're working with them to try and get all the 911 calls from JEC loaded in. They had, again, this is just interesting in the difference in technology. Dave Schwint had talked to them about doing it, and they tried to upload stuff, and it pretty near crashed the 911 system. So they had to stop. Well, they got talking to the guy who runs the Loom, and he said, oh, but if we do this, this, and this, then all the load is on my servers, in other words, Amazon servers, and not on yours. I mean, the technology understanding just was way over my head. But the point is, they're doing really good things, being able to put all this information in. They were able to do a couple different data dives during the meeting to show how, and one of them was out of Salt Lake City. 4 individuals, and these are true. These are not just hypotheticals. These are true cases of true individuals over a 2-year period. 2 or 4 year period had cost something like $2 million in services. I mean, they'd priced out a night in the jail. They had priced out the ER services. They had priced out every other service. But the only way they were able to do it was because all these different providers of services were willing to put their information into a system where it could actually be looked at. So you could actually pull up an individual's name, and depending upon your clearance level, if you will, you could see every single service that this person had obtained over the last 2 years. The idea is ultimately our police officers could be called to a residence and they could pull up that residence and they could see all the different calls that have been made there. They could see the individuals related to those calls, and they could get a certain amount of information on the types of calls that had been made there. Now, as police officers, they would not have access to information that was HIPAA classified. But that's the neat thing about this program, is you can cut and dice it a million different ways so that people who have various, somebody in the medical field could have the HIPAA information. Police officer would not have HIPAA information. So that's the kind of stuff that's happening here in Johnson County as one of the best 3 teams in the country on data-driven justice initiatives. They will be teaching in DC next month, and I would like for us as a council to ask them to come and give us a presentation with the permission of the rest of you after they get back. I think it would be really good to get more publicity, not at 10:15 at night when nobody's going to bother to have watched the end of this meeting, but to get them on, at at a reasonable time. I think it's just incredible what they're doing and what that will allow us to do also in terms of policy going forward.
And it really hooks into what Kingsley is talking about, has talked so much about, is the data-driven solutions.
Yeah, you have to have the data, and
So-
they're starting, and it's powerful what's available, so. And also, real quickly, related to the police, as Jim mentioned earlier, he and I were here this morning for the ceremony from the chaplains on Police Appreciation Week, and just thank you to all of our police officers.
Right. Okay, thanks, everybody. I want to mention a few things I've been doing or that are coming up that might be of interest to you and the public. I made a short keynote speech at the Human Rights Commission's Human Rights Award program on May the 10th. Stephanie Bowers did a superb job of organizing that, as did other people involved in the commission. A lot of people there, too. Yesterday, I took part in the bike, bus, car race, and I don't know how to tell you all this, but I didn't win. You know, I finished second. I was like 5 seconds behind Mike Haverkamp, who rode the bus. He went flying by me in the last seconds. Oh, well. Jeff and I attended the Partnership for Alcohol Safety meeting, Tom Rockin's last meeting, and I praised Tom at that moment, during the meeting. He's done a superb job for the university and for the city of Iowa City in his capacity as at the university, especially as co-chairing of the Partnership for Alcohol Safety. Also, Eric Gores did a terrific job of summarizing what's been done over the years. Also, there's an ex-offender named Jonathan Cana who will be speaking about the struggle of the ex-offender's identity on Thursday night from 7 p.m. till 8:30. This is May 18th. Alas, I don't know exactly where he's going to be doing this, but he right now, or this evening, has been out at Oakdale Prison listening to the choir concert out there. And I think Mary Cohen, who is the conductor of that whole experience, was going to introduce him and ask him to say a few words at Oakdale. Anyhow, he's staying with my wife and I right now. He's a really fine individual who made a bad mistake at a certain point in his life. Also, I expect to do my first Mayor's Walk of the season on Friday, this coming Friday, May 19th. So with luck, I'm going to send something to the staff tomorrow so we can have a press release about that. Also, I don't think it's been announced yet, we're going to have at least not in tonight's meeting, we're going to have a joint work session with the County Board of Supervisors on May the 24th, starting at 5 p.m. We also have an Economic Development Committee meeting on May the 25th from 11 till noon. I think this might be an important meeting of the committee. I think we're going to be coming to some decisions and votes and so on about what to forward to the full council. Bike Master Plan, there's going to be an open house about it at the Senior Center on May the 25th from 6 to 8 p.m. And I'm shocked nobody mentioned Arts Fest. It's going to take place between now and our next meeting. So
Oh, wow.
It will take place from June the 1st to June the 4th.
I just
All right.
can't believe June is around the corner.
Summer's here when Arts Fest comes.
Unbelievable. Okay, item 22, report from the city manager and assistant city manager, city attorney, city clerk.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, wait a minute.
Stop.
I need to ask a question of
Okay.
Julie. With regard to item 18, Julie, I'm looking at my own notes. Did you get a motion to accept, did you hear a motion to accept correspondence? I don't think I asked for that motion.
think
Can
we
I do
skipped
that
over
right
that.
now, Eleanor? Yeah.
So moved.
Second, third.
Okay, so this is a motion to accept correspondence pertaining to item 18. Moved by Mims, seconded by Dickens. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item
you.
23, do we have a motion to adjourn?
No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I forgot one thing that I've been meaning.
quick off
I
the-
know. I got it.
Objected.
You got a memo about the city clerk search process. We
Oh,
are
right.
doing interviews on Monday, the 22nd, of the internal applicants. I would like for you to look at your calendars and would like to reserve some time, either Wednesday, the 24th, or Thursday, the 25th. Probably looking at half a day, if we could potentially do back-to-back, if we can do that for potentially two. I don't know if we'll have two. So I meant to send this out in an email, and life has just been a little crazy. So Wednesday, the 24th, Thursday, the 25th, if we can possibly find. And if we can't do them back-to-back, Jim's looking very,
Well, we have the meeting with the counties, that work session with the county board of supervisors starting at 5.
right, I'm looking in the
24th.
middle of the day.
Yeah, I understand that. I don't know, I can make time, I think.
The issue is, if we can't get it in that week, we go into June. Pauline's gone the first week of June. We don't end up doing this until the second week of June. So if we can possibly squeeze it in.
All right, so let me get a proposal on the table. Thursday afternoon, the 25th.
We have economic development at 11, so. we
Right,
could-
so we start at 1 or
1 o'clock.
At work.
25th at 1,
So
would
a
that
couple
work?
hours, block off,
Yeah, that should
about
work.
an hour for each.
Yeah.
Basically, is what we did the last.
John,
Yeah.
Pauline?
Yeah.
Can that work?
All
Okay.
right, so you're saying 1 till...
1 PM to, let's say, 3:30? Gives us a little bit of a break in.
3:18.
Well, we
As I
may
can
want to
give you.
discuss afterwards, so if you can
All right.
block it,
So this is interviews with candidates, is that right?
right, candidate or candidates, we'll see what we end up with after we meet on Monday. But I guess I would say if you could block out the bulk of the afternoon, that would be better. But we'll start at 1.
All right.
Thank you very much. My apologies for last minute. on
So
that.
moved.
So we need a motion to adjourn?
I think he already did. Second.
Oh, moved by Dickens, second by Mims. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
You're watching City Channel 4. On TV, online, on demand, on Facebook, and now on the go on your mobile device.